just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones? You entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, here for you, back in the studio after last week's a show that I thought was a whole hell of a lot of fun. Doing it from just a little picnic table in the middle of the woods in gorgeous New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire particularly, which is particularly gorgeous. But back in the studio now, but I am not alone this week, and I am so happy for that, because honestly, it makes my job a whole hell of a lot easier. You know, I'll tell you, I can't believe that I do 2 hours a week. Hell, I do more than 2 hours a week. You kidding me? If you're a patron, if you're a Sovereign Tech patron, how many hours a week do you get of me? You know, and the fact that there's people that still listen, I mean, I can't.
Sometimes they get more of you than I do.
Well, we're right. I mean, that's and I can't even stand myself that long.
It's a good thing I'm not jealous.
Oh,
I
well,
mean, or else the listeners would be
not a jealous bone in that body. Anyway, and what a body. Anyway, of course, you just realized that I am being joined by the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Woo!
Woo, all right. And not only that, but also somebody that you that people may have gotten a reintroduction to, or didn't realize that she had been on Sovereign Tech in the past, but it was one of my favorite episodes of all time, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Woo, what's left of it. And that is, and I am joined this week also in studio. I love it when it's in studio by Ellen Ball. Ellen, welcome back to Sovereign Tech.
Oh, thank you so much, Brian. I'm really excited to be back.
Yeah. I mean, I'm being joined here by, you know, and this episode is going to be heavy on the science, I think. I mean, I'll get in some tech here and there, but I'm being joined by what really is this fair to say, by two scientists? I mean, full on scientists. I mean, Ellen, you're doing the real deal.
I'd say that's fair.
Yeah. I mean, and Stephanie's the full on PhD. Ellen is, you know, aspiring to be like Stephanie I met. Well, no, I wouldn't
She's
make such
my hero.
I'll tell you, I think Stephanie, I really think a lot of people do see you as their absolute hero. I mean, even I do, hell. But I think there's a lot of women that, yeah.
That's adorable, Brian. Thank you for saying that. I think you're my hero, too,
Ellen started
in so many ways.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's really touching, because I think that is a great dynamic to have in a romantic relationship, is when you look to the other person as someone you really admire and consider them a hero. It's so Ayn Randian, but it's true.
Admire? I mean, more like infatuated, more like, you know, okay, can I save some of this ground that she walked on? Can I collect this and like hold on to it, put in a little necklace, wear it around my neck or something like that? I mean, that's the way I feel about it.
Now it's just getting a little creepy.
Wow, man.
Take a lock of her hair.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You know, I've got a lot of hair, and when I brush it in the shower...
That's an interesting subject.
You know, sometimes it sheds into my hairbrush, and I end up with this big hairball after a shower. And Brian and I have a double shower head, so we shower at the same time.
And everybody, now I just lost a ton of listeners now because, oh shit, they're like, I mean, it was bad enough when you were on the show 2 weeks ago stripping in the studio. People were like, I can't believe somebody was stripping on audio, right? I mean, this is an email I got. It was unbelievable. And
for that one guy who was pissed off, or whoever it was, for that one person who was pissed off, there were hundreds that loved it. I promise you.
I loved it. I loved hearing Brian's reaction to the whole thing. Very exciting.
Yay.
Yeah. So anyway, now
endorsement. But that story about the shower was not supposed to be sexual at all. I mean, what I was about to say was that,
you know, everybody's imagining, whoa, they're in the shower at the same time, like every time.
Guess what, people? It happened earlier today.
Right
before you got here, Ellen. But yeah, I shed a lot of hair. So the point of the story was, if you really wanted to go around collecting locks of my hair, you would have to look no further than the shower drain, because there's lots of it that pools up.
Wow, and then you just took that sexiness and you just brought it all the way down to the bottom. And,
all the way down to the shower drain.
We need a Velcro sound now.
Yeah, I'd have to stand up. Hold on. Can I get it? There
All
it
right,
is.
now you have to explain that joke.
No.
Because look out, there's an inside joke, listeners, now that you're a part of it. I'm
I'm going
to bring them in on it.
No,
Otherwise, it's
you
got to
keep it a secret cabal.
Brian, you love to keep things too secret so that nobody gets it.
This is great because then, if somebody's being, I guess I'm kind of hinting at it. If somebody's actually being kind of creepy, we could just, look at each other and we could all have Velcro wallets or something. And we could just, rip
Secret
the Velcro.
signal.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, all right, I'll go rescue her.
I don't even think I own any Velcro. That's how sexy I am. So the joke is that when you hear the sound of Velcro unvelcing or whatever it is,
sure.
When you hear the sound of a Velcro closure opening, run, because that's not sexy. That's it makes you think of an old man's shoes or something.
Right. Yeah, so all right, so the joke that I made, fine, you're right, we'll pay the tease. So the joke that I made was that if you hear Velcro, yeah, because it sounds like Velcro shoes or something that older people, and look, nothing against older people whatsoever, of course, but that's not a very sexy thing and that it can instantly kill the mood. It could be the hottest thing, everybody could be wearing leather, there could be, straps on the bed, just all this wild shit could be going on, but as soon as you hear Velcro, whoosh, the mood just dies, and everybody just kind of runs away. It's like, look, I'm sorry, I just can't go forward with this night. So anyway, if you hear Velcro, that's what's going down. All right. Yeah. So there's the joke. And looks like people are taking pictures. I really should be taking pictures of all of us in the studio. Maybe Stephanie can take care of that while I'm busy talking.
Pictures.
So anyway, Ellen, we had this huge roundabout talking about being in showers and all this different stuff. It really is great to have you back on the show. You are, you used to have a podcast. Can I tell this?
Sure, you can talk about it.
Okay, because you kind of went under a pseudonym with the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I can mention what the name of the show is?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, all right. If not, I could edit this and we don't have to talk about it. But you had the show, The Illumination Hour. This was one of my top podcasts. 20 episodes did you go with that?
It was about 27, I think.
27, something like that. Okay, right. And you just, wow. I mean, first off, you had episodes where you were playing audio of Captain Picard talking. I mean, that alone is enough to get everybody excited, right? So, but I think you are absolutely brilliant, and it went on full display. These episodes are still available out there, as far as I know. And if you haven't checked that out, people should check that out. So it's really great. I think you're an absolute podcast professional. I think you put it on display with that show. So it's great to have you on. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I think you have all the credentials in the world to talk about anything of whatever the hell we're going to talk about. We're going to get into some fun subjects, no doubt about that.
Your podcast had a very appropriate name. It was the Illumination Hour. And I thought it was great because it was illuminating.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's so nice of you guys to say. I mean, every time I hear somebody else mention that to me, they're always saying something like, "Oh, it's so nice," but in my head, I'm like, "Oh, that was pretty rough." I don't know what people saw in it, but I guess some people really admired it, and it wouldn't have been complete without Captain Picard. I mean, he had to be in at least once.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure.
I brought Carl Sagan in too.
Oh,
so
you got to have Sagan.
Yeah. I mean, he's the master.
He really is. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, what was, just briefly, what inspired you to do that show? What was, because I actually hope people do. I recommended it on Sovryn Tech back when it was, a running thing. But I really do recommend people check it out. I think every one of those episodes is absolutely evergreen. I mean, there's fantastic episodes, even ones that talk about culture and civilization that I think have such a rare but important and powerful message out there. But I mean, what was your inspiration for even doing that show at the time?
So I wanted to have a sort of outlet because I'd been doing podcasts in the past, and I just found it really therapeutic in a way because you get to express your thoughts and your opinions, and nobody argues with you at the time. You just say it, and whatever arguments people have, you don't get to hear them really unless they email you. And I mean, I reached out for people for commentary, didn't really get that much, but the stuff I did get was really impactful. So I loved hearing from other listeners and getting that feedback. But I just loved being able to express my desires, my passions, and share that with other people. That was really the inspiration. I just wanted to put something out into the world.
Yeah.
I love learning, and I hope everybody else can pick up on that.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. In fact, my reasons for doing this show, very similar, is I don't hear my opinions. I want them to be out there, you know, and I want to share my passions. I want to share what I care about and all these different things. I think that's fantastic. And definitely, I mean, really, I learned stuff, you know, not saying that I'm some brilliant guy or whatever, but I mean, I learned a whole hell of a lot when listening to your show. So in my opinion, mission accomplished with what you had in mind, you know, in doing that. So yeah, so you've got all the chops in the world as far as, you know, podcasting and everything. And I do recommend that people check out that show. I mean, there's so many subjects that get discussed in it. I really think that it's a lot of fun. So anyway, we're going to have a sneeze. Here we go. Let her rip. Live to tape. Did you mute it, Stephanie?
I did. I was trying to like be professional.
No.
Then you called me out.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she's going to sneeze. I mean, they're going to hear it anyway. Yeah. Real life. You know, funny thing. So last night, Stephanie and I were at Denny's, of all places. I know that's not like the sexiest thing. What do you think about Denny's, actually?
They're open 24/7, which is incredible. You know, I love them just for that.
Yep. Well said. You in New Hampshire, shit, it's fucking rare to find places that are open 24/7.
Yeah, so kudos to Denny's.
Right on. So anyway, we're at Denny's. I'm glad you feel that way, Ellen. So we're at Denny's. And like, there's this like, I don't know, 60, they were talking about AARP at one point. So I'm guessing they're about 65 or something. There's people sitting sort of behind us. And like this woman is saying, I don't know, they're talking about Trump or something like that. And he responds with, you know, instead of saying like, this is serious, or like, wow, that's serious, or wow, that, you know, this is incredible or something like that. He says, wow, that's real life. You know? Yep. I thought that was like the best. I'm like, I'm going to use that forever. Like, I can't believe a 65, again, not making fun of old people here, folks, but I can't believe that somebody like taught me some really cool lingo. Like, oh yeah, it's like, whoa, that's real life. You know?
IRL.
Yeah, right. In real life. Awesome.
Do it live.
Yeah, do it live. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
I have a favorite when we go to Denny's. And I love Denny's, not just because it's open 24 hours.
We are going to get into subjects, folks. Don't worry. Yes.
Sorry, am I derailing it?
Please, no. They want to hear it. Tell the story.
I want to hear about pancakes.
Yes, pancakes.
Well, Brian loves pancakes.
It's true, but I don't eat them.
He gets them sometimes, but
I don't eat them because they make me.
They make you turn into a pancake. Yeah. not in the sense of being flat as a pancake, but being like round and doughy.
I will not eat those. It's bad news. I have a figure to worry about here.
Well, anyway, my favorite thing to get is Denny's has this thing called the Slam Burger, which is a burger with a fried egg and like bacon on it and hash browns. And so I get a Slam Burger with no bun, and instead of a bun, I get a grilled chicken breast, and it is so freaking good.
Wow.
Yeah. How about you, Ellen? Do you have a favorite?
Just a pile of protein.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Denny's in a while, but every time I used to go there when I was like in high school and I was going out with my friends at like 11 p.m., I would just get pancakes or, you know, hash browns.
Right.
Yeah. I've been a vegetarian for a long time, so I can't eat the Slam Burger, unfortunately. I think
they do have. I think they have
shakes.
the Boca Burgers there, right?
Yeah, they've got veggie burgers.
but I hear you. Right. So continue.
Yeah. Do you remember when they were running this campaign where like everything had bacon in it?
Yes.
And they had the bacon shakes, the milkshakes.
Maple bacon shakes.
That was not too long ago.
Did you guys ever try those?
I did. Yep.
Okay.
You
got in on the bacon fad.
Like
did you try it, Ellen? Did you break your vegetarianism?
No, I didn't try it. I just thought that was like such a weird combination that they would put together.
It's surprising how many things bacon goes with that you wouldn't think, because it's like this savory taste, and it's good sweat or savory. So
all right, well, I'll give my review if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, what did you think of it?
Okay, so like, you know, when they get kind of like seasonal things at Denny's, right? And this is kind of letting in how often Stephanie and I go. but they get these seasonal things, and so they'll add like a little insert to the menu, you know, with these seasonal items or whatever. And all of the maple and bacon items all had their own menu. So I just, you know, on this one little sheet, not that anybody can see what I'm describing here, I'm like moving my hands and, well, anyway. On this one sheet, I just ordered everything. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll just take everything that's on the sheet here, you know, to try all of these different items. I mean, in fact, I think there's like there's some degree of research on the fact that most people buy things just on, like, I just have to know what that tastes like, and then they never buy it again. And that's why so many companies...
That's why they change it up so much, because you got to keep it new and interesting.
That's why like Mountain Dew has so many different flavors and all this, not because they're ever going to like go long term with any of these flavors, but just because they know that people will buy it as long as it's new, even if they never try it again, which I did try that Pepsi Fire, by the way. And it did taste.
Well, you got to review that.
Yeah, that
too.
did taste like vodka, but anyway.
What? Oh.
Yeah. And I don't drink.
That's
really,
not a good advertisement.
Yeah, I mean, well, I could tell a story around the Pepsi Fire, but maybe I'll save that for like a Patreon episode or something so we can get into the subjects. But anyway, so the maple bacon stuff, like the milkshake that you described, Ellen, I thought it was too sweet. Like it was, and I know there isn't, Stephanie would say there's no such thing as too sweet, but
I was thinking, yeah.
I
kept that thought to myself.
Well, you can never be too sweet. You are the sweetest.
That's
thing in the
because
world.
that's what you say to me all the time.
Yeah. But anyway, this milkshake with maple and bacon, I don't know. I didn't necessarily think that it worked. But otherwise, you can toss bacon on just about anything, and particularly when you're like me or maybe like Stephanie, and I think we at some point we like honorarily added Ellen to the tribe. If you grow up Jewish,
Wait, how did Ellen get in?
I'm part of the cabal now. Don't you remember? Last time I came over, I was added into your guys' tribe.
She's like, I want to be Jewish, and I said, all right, I as a Kohanim myself, I said,
okay, so I'll be the mother. I'll be like Ellen's adoptive mother.
Okay.
And since I'm Jewish, you're Jewish.
Ellen is smiling at this.
Oh, thank
you. I don't think she minds this at all.
Oh, no, I don't mind it at all. Bring
Okay.
it on.
All right. So,
Does that mean I get in on all the secret Jew groups, like the ones that are running Hollywood?
Yes.
Yes. That is another subject for another time.
And I haven't even been invited, so I mean that's pretty good.
Well, anyway, these are all very large subjects. You're not supposed to read the Kabbalah till you're 40. I'm not even 40 yet, but
yeah, but you've read it, right?
well, yeah.
You weren't going to wait.
I
I have not read it. I don't know. Maybe I'd be interested, but I think I get that wisdom. Like, maybe you're not ready for it yet. Like, you won't be able to get as much out of it until you have the life experience and self-knowledge of like a 40-year-old.
Well, yeah. So the Kabbalah
Maybe
is really...
It's not like don't read it or something bad will happen to you. It's just like...
No, it is. That's their claim, is that you'll go insane.
You?
Well, like, because, I mean, you're going to be summoning demons, effectively,
All
which
right.
is probably what... Oh, I love this all. Ellen, you're the best. She's like, all right, yeah, let's bring on the demons.
I don't know if I'd be so excited about it.
Well, I think
just...
that's what happened to me. Sorry, I said that out loud.
Now you're just trying to piss people off. I think they just mean that, you're not going to get as much out of it if you're too young to really like reap the benefits and understand what it means.
If you take it seriously, it's a whole other... I mean, and it just goes to show, like, I remember, so there's a little while where like Kabbalah... all right, hold on. So how we got on this subject is I was saying that bacon is very exciting when you grew up Jewish and you never really got to eat it except for
That's
turkey
true.
bacon.
For me, it was such a taboo. We
Right.
got to have it once a year on Christmas. I guess that's like the least Jewish day of the year. My
Yes.
dad was not Jewish. My mom was. And my mom didn't cook any pork. She was like responsible for all the cooking, and she would not cook pork because she did not grow up eating it. And so she didn't know how to cook it, and it disgusted her.
Right.
But once a year, they would have a Christmas party on Christmas, and she would allow my dad to cook bacon. So we got it once a year, and that was my favorite part of Christmas.
Yeah, I feel the same way about pepperoni.
Screw Santa, give me the bacon.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, it becomes a taboo, and then
Yes.
it's like so good.
yes, absolutely. And so now, yeah, bacon on everything works. Anyway, my point about Kabbalah. So in the 90s, in aughts, when like Madonna and Britney Spears and Ashton Kutcher and all these different people were suddenly wearing red strings around their wrists and all this stuff, I'm like, oh, you're all full of shit. Like, you're not learning Kabbalah. You're not even remotely really, or at least you're not practicing anything Jewish. I'm not saying they're not Jewish or something, but because again, one of the very basic precepts of Kabbalah is that you're not supposed to learn about it till you're 40. However, I will give out this little tease. I did recently acquire, thanks to a Sovereign Tech listener, a book called The Kabbalah Decoded. And I will be doing a review of this book on the Patreon feed. And so sovereigntech.com if you want to become a Sovereign Tech patron. Anyway, so all right, so we're all Jews here. This is good. I think we've come to that conclusion. And Stephanie is the mother of
She's the mother of all Jews, or just the mother of me?
Just the mother of you.
All right.
Not in the adopted mother, but still a mother.
Okay.
You know what?
I think I can-
Actually, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I can get down with that.
Aren't you?
Yeah, I know. I never wanted to have kids, but you're like already grown up, so it's okay. You get a pass.
Yeah, you don't need to feed me or change my diapers or anything. Just, yeah, I'll see you like once a month and you'll be like, go for it, kid.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome.
Let's do that.
So this actually reminds me of something that I need to so there is a Sovryn Tech calendar. Like I have a set I have Sovryn Tech holidays. Okay. And so we all get to somebody else that I think or at least at some point, I'm pretty sure I told her, I was like, okay, fine. You can be part of the tribe too. That's MK Lords. Her July 4th is not Independence Day on Sovryn Tech, folks. And the show somehow the show always seems to end up on July 4th. But anyway, July 4th for Sovryn Tech is MK Lord's Day. Of course, it's her birthday.
That's right.
So anyway, let's get this out right now. But happy birthday, MK. Everybody else can say it too. Come on.
Happy birthday,
Happy
MK.
birthday, MK.
Yeah. That's great how that works.
Happy birthday.
So on July 4th, everybody celebrate MK Lord's Day. Fuck this Independence Day shit. And because that's all nonsense as to where MK actually does something to better the world. So anyway, we got that out of the way. I'm glad because I almost forgot about doing that. But so we celebrate the Sovryn Tech calendar. Why don't we finally get into some subjects? Unless anybody else has anything else they want to get out there.
No, let's get into the meat.
What do you think,
and
Ellen?
bacon.
Get into it.
Let's get into the tofu of the
That's right.
conversation.
Soybean nuggets.
The one vegetarian among us. Oh boy, there's sounds that I'm sure everybody's hearing here. My computer's making sounds. Anyway,
Okay. Yeah,
what?
Go ahead.
What do you got? What do you got?
No, I'm sorry. I don't want to derail any further. Go
Go ahead, derail it. People
Well,
are going to love
I was
it.
just going to say, you may not believe this, but I was a vegetarian at one point.
I was
Really?
too.
Yeah, we've both
Yeah.
been vegetarians. We're recovering vegetarians.
Wow, no judgment.
Rehabilitating.
It did not work well for my body. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Like I did it because I thought, it was like, I thought it was like less cruel to animals and stuff like that. But I ended up learning that I have to worry about myself because it was just like really wreaking havoc on my health and it didn't work for me. So I took the path of taking care of number one first, and I'm okay with that.
Well, that's respectable.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna ask you about vegetarianism here in a second, but I'll give my quick explanation of what happened to me. So
You didn't really choose it.
No,
it was
right.
forced upon you.
Right,
So
my parents converted
could
to
color your experience quite a bit.
Yeah, so like we were talking about the Jewish thing, I mean, like I'm ethnically Jewish. I was raised in Judaism for a long time, but then it ended up my parents converted to Seventh-day Adventism. Crazy story that I could tell sometime. But it was just madness. Ellen's over there like, oh no.
Do you know the story, Ellen?
I think you've brought it up in the past.
I'm sure I've mentioned it. So anyway, so they're really big on veganism. It's not like a requirement, but they're really big on it. And so we were vegans for a few years. And then I don't know what happened. My mother just stopped caring or what, divorce, all kinds of crazy shit goes down. And suddenly we started eating meat again. I think it's probably because we ended up like my grandmother moved in with us and all this different stuff. So I started eating meat and I have pictures of me when I was a vegetarian and I was like a rail. I mean, I was very, very stick thin.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
I think there's different types of vegetarians. Like some people get really thin and some people lose a lot of muscle mass.
Sure.
And some people get really a lot of body fat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I gained body fat when I became a vegetarian.
Well,
you wouldn't think because it's I think it's less calories, less fat. But I just have one of those metabolisms that's way better on protein and fat and carb. Carbs are like my undoing. So
well, I think
that's one reason why it didn't work for me.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is I think there's a variety of diets for a variety. I mean, everybody's different. I think there's a lot of different diets that work for different people. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so I started eating meat. And then one day my older brother, his girlfriend, okay, who I thought was very attractive at the time. She says to me, "Wow, Brian, when did you get so huge?" And I just...
you must have loved that.
Well, as soon as I heard that, I was like, holy shit. It's like, someone buy me a cow. It's like, I'll carve off what I want and I'll ride the rest home. I'm never going to not eat meat again. So I got so excited about that. It's like, oh, this is great. You get compliments just for eating like this. And yeah. So anyway, that's sort of what happened for me. But I get it. Like why people, I mean, there's certainly some ethical stances. In fact, some people think I'm actually a hypocrite for, because some of my stances on non-killing and all these other things for, the fact that I eat animals or whatever. But I mean, if you're open to sharing, if you're not, that's okay. But Ellen, I mean, I'd be curious, what's your reasons for being vegetarian maybe? And yeah, I mean, just break it down. I think people would be interested to hear.
Okay. So originally when I became a vegetarian, it was for health reasons mainly. Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Because I started reading this book about how unhealthy it is for your body to be eating meat. And I don't know how scientifically accurate it was because it was kind of one of those pop culture books. I was like 14 at the time, so it was an easy read for me. And I just started learning more and more after that about the food industry and like factory farming.
Yeah.
And it really disgusted me the way that they're treating animals, like commodities. And also like I wanted to lose weight because I was kind of chunky as a kid, and as soon as I became a vegan, which I started out going full vegan.
Right.
Like I went from regular meat eater, like American diet, to just straight up veganism.
Yeah, you can't really call
overnight.
that cold turkey because that wouldn't make sense.
Tofurkey.
Tofurkey. Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So it was really noticeable within the first month. I lost like 15 pounds, and I just felt great. I felt light. I didn't have digestive issues or anything. I just had so much more energy, and over time, I started feeling like being a vegetarian is not just about caring about me, it's about caring about all of the animals too, because I love seeing life succeed. I think life is the real miracle here on Earth, that
Sure.
it exists at all, and I want to respect that as much as possible. And like I've got to stay alive too. I've got to take care of myself, but if I can save a few animals from going to the slaughterhouse, I'd be happy to do that.
Right on. Yeah. So, I mean, so it started off as health. I mean, and you're right. Like I said, when I went vegan, like I was actually kind of I was a chunky kid as well. And then I became an absolute rail, like I was describing. I mean, it's amazing that I mean, again, different effects on different people, I suppose, but I can certainly corroborate that occurs.
Yeah. Well, have you seen my arms?
They're
quite tiny.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, I mean,
yeah, it had the opposite effect on me. Like I was overweight when I was a teenager as well. And I remember the first thing I tried to lose weight was like exercising, but also going on like a low fat diet. And I remember like taking the yolks out of my eggs and stuff and doing egg white omelets and like worrying about how much butter I would put on my toast and stuff.
Nah.
But I quickly figured out that it wasn't the butter, it was the toast because I actually gained weight when I was doing that, and I was hungry all the time and just felt miserable. So yeah, again, like different metabolisms for different people, but I ended up losing all the weight on a low carb diet. And then I tried to go sort of like low carb vegetarian, and that was what really didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Like definitely some nutrition issues there. But yeah, I mean, I really get that argument of like sort of, you hear it in yoga too. Like a lot of people who are interested in yoga are vegetarians or Buddhists or anything like that. Some of those Eastern traditions where it's like, it's part of a whole attitude of nonviolence, I guess. Like, just, yeah, maybe you eating vegetarian isn't going to make an impact on how many animals are killed in these factory farms. They're still going to be in business, but at least you're not really participating in it, and
right.
you're not like inviting it into your life, I guess, or having it be a part of your diet that you rely on. So, I mean, I do get that. One thing that I found really interesting, an argument that I came across like after I started being a carnivore again, was that animals in the wild, like nobody can argue that factory farms are good, right? I mean, everybody knows they're heinous, right? Even if they do produce protein foods at like a lower cost, and that may be affordable to some people that wouldn't be able to afford like grass-fed or pastured meat and eggs and stuff. Nobody likes the conditions on factory farms, and that's why they're usually secretive about them and they don't want people to see them. But on the other hand, like if you knew about animals that were happy during their lives and they had like access to pastures and could roam around like grass-fed cows or pasture-raised chickens or pigs or stuff like that, and then they're killed in a humane way where they don't feel any pain or they feel like as little pain as possible during death, and they're treated well during their lives, isn't that even more humane in some ways than an animal being in the wild and like having to die of like either getting attacked by another animal and being like ripped apart or having a disease and like dying from that? So, I mean, I think it could be a higher quality of life if it was in a farm with like good conditions. I also see like, you know, maybe those animals don't want to be, maybe animals just want to have to be free to be happy, right? But I don't know. I mean, I think like an animal with a happy life makes better food and it's cleaner on your conscience as well. So I try to go for like grass-fed meat whenever possible. But then there's the problem of being able to afford it because it is more expensive. But so I don't know. What do you think about that? What all that?
So I think you're right in that it is a lot more humane to take care of animals in that way, to let them roam free in their pastures and, you know, live out their little cow lives chewing on grass and being pal. Yeah. Whatever, you know, but cows are not naturally, you know, if humans hadn't intervened, we wouldn't have cows like we do today, which is another thing that I wonder about, you know.
Yeah, like, most cows would have been like bucking broncos.
Yeah,
I mean, literally they'd be moving and
Well, they wouldn't be bucking broncos, they'd be buffalo.
well, right, but I mean, like they would be.
But cows and bison is an interesting example because cows are not in danger of going extinct because they're farmed and used for meat. But bison have been hunted almost to extinction because there's no like property rights and they're not raised for meat usually. So anyway, I just have to bring out my little cow, the studio cow. Brian, take a picture of this.
Take a picture. All right. Ellen, you can keep responding to like what the point you were making.
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is I think animals naturally are much happier out in the wild where, you know, they've evolved to live. They're probably more suited for that environment. And I think, you know, if you're going to eat animals, of course, it's much better to eat.
Now Ellen's holding the cow.
It's so cute.
Isn't that a sweet little cow?
Giant eyes.
All the better to be cute with.
Oh, dreamy eyes. That's what it's called. It does have dreamy eyes. Yeah.
Take a picture.
Take a picture? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so, this is making for rough podcasting, but okay.
Yeah, so, like I was saying, it is much better to eat, you know, animals that have been raised free range, for sure. And I get your argument there, but I still would not want to do that if I had any other option because I want to see those animals live, you know? I want to see them go about their life. And I think there's something to be said for like consuming the flesh of another being too. That's, to me, that just seems a little intense, a little creepy.
Sure.
You know, it's at the point when you start eating it. I don't like saying this around other meat eaters because they take offense or they get disgusted.
No, go for it.
It's rotting flesh, like.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, I'm going to eat this stuffed animal here. No, well, you know, I mean, one thing that I think, like any of these, like any diet, you know, and I say this all the time, and I haven't said it on Sovryn Tech probably in a while, but any diet, like when people start on a diet of some kind, like when you switch to vegetarian or vegan, you went vegan initially or whatever. I mean, part of, I think what makes it work and why people like start associating a lot of positive change is because you're getting away often from like the processed foods and from the terrible ways, like you're describing, Ellen, the terrible ways that these animals are raised and everything. You know, you're getting away from all of that. And I mean, that's why like every diet seems to work at first, I think, because almost every diet book you ever read, you know, South Beach or whatever, if you start going vegetarian or something and you're buying cage-free eggs if you're vegetarian, you can still eat eggs, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You know, you start paying attention to all this different stuff. You start paying attention to your food and that instantaneously
you're being
creates
more
a positive
mindful
effect
of what you eat. And that's, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, and it's nothing like woo-woo, even though I think there's also, I think when you start caring about your food, I think there is somewhat of almost a placebo effect that can occur for a person where they just feel positive about their health choices and they feel positive about their food. And that creates a healthy outcome, I think, as well when you start on these diets, you know, whether you're going vegetarian or you go paleo or you go low carb or whatever.
It's sending a message to yourself, like, I care about my health, right? So I'm going to be conscious of what I eat. And that is a positive message for you to receive because then you start caring more about yourself in other areas, maybe. And it's like reaffirming. Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have any other thoughts you want to share on this, Ellen, or?
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, when I became a vegan, I eventually switched to vegetarianism because I love fatty foods, and a lot of fatty foods involve like cheese and butter and ice cream, all the delicious stuff. But it really did help me to start paying attention. Like I started reading ingredients labels, and I was paying attention. I even stopped eating as many carbs as I used to because, like you said, carbs are basically just sugar, and they don't really contribute a lot to your healthfulness. But it was overall a great decision for me, and I understand that it's not for everyone.
Sure.
like you guys, you have different body types, so you're more maybe like built for powerful stuff. I'm more built for like maybe long distance running, but yeah, I'm also very tiny, so so like to each their own. Everybody has a different diet, but I like feeling that animals are not dying because of the choices that I make.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, and to some degree, I feel the same way. Like I feel very questionable, honestly, about eating octopus. I won't eat dolphin. I mean, even when I used to go to Japan, that's one of the rare places in the world where dolphin is regularly consumed. I feel like that might be a sapient
really smart
creature.
Animal. Yeah. That's like eating a chimp or something.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole subject we could go down, but we don't have to. But I mean, I get that mentality, like, because there are creatures where, like, I'm not going to eat an elephant. Like, there are things I'm not going to eat because in the evidence is presented to me as I have experienced it, is that some of these creatures, they might be, just shy of human consciousness, or of sapience anyway, to a degree. So I don't feel comfortable eating that. It's like, wait a minute, this thing might need, I mean, not that I believe in the concept of rights, but like, this thing might need rights. Like, what the fuck am I doing? Killing it and eating it.
Yeah. What about the butterfly effect? Do you think that that's part of the argument too? Is like, what if you eat this dolphin, but that was the dolphin that eventually ascended to sapience?
Yeah, it becomes Echo, and they made a whole video game about that dolphin. Shit.
And now you're digesting him.
Yeah, so. right. So anyway, I'm going to take this opportunity to go into a segue here, because I just mentioned video games and I mentioned Echo the dolphin. So let's get into our stories this week. Is everybody ready for that?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
I mean, because I'll tell you, like, when I mean, I am at the ladies' whims. I mean, whatever. You two could just take over.
Women on top.
Yeah,
today.
I mean, whenever whoever's Paige is in here, MK's in here, Ellen's in here, Stephanie, of course, when you're in here. I mean, whatever. You can take total control of the show, and I'll run with whatever you want to do. So I have no problem.
Great.
With that.
All right, I like being in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. You two are in total charge. So. Anyway, something I did want to bring up quickly is that I was right about something. And so this is going to be, in case anybody hadn't noticed, this is going to be a very non-traditional episode. We're not going to, not that I like traditionalism in any way, shape, or form, but this is going to follow a very different format than what Sovryn Tech normally does. There's not going to be segments, not going to get into all of that. We're just going to run off some stories and see where they end up. And things might get sexy later. But anyway, something that I think is kind of sexy, but I know not everybody's a gamer like me, but this is something that I just have to bring up because I was right. And not that it was a hard call for somebody to make. A lot of other people were saying that this is going to end up being a thing. But the SNES Classic is going to be coming out. And what this is it's
maybe.
Well, right. So
maybe it's going to be coming out. I'm skeptical after what happened with the NES Classic.
All right. So November 2016, there was supposed to what was getting released by Nintendo was what was called the NES Classic, the original Nintendo. Now, Ellen, you never played really either of these systems, right?
No.
But you're a Nintendo fan, yeah?
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. Mario Kart.
GameCube?
Fuck yeah. Yeah. Oh, now you're talking. Absolutely. One of my favorite systems. Game Boy. Yeah, everybody loves Game Boy. Anyway, so they came out with the NES Classic last year, and it was the weirdest thing because come April 2017, in not even really like 6 months, Nintendo says, okay, first off, nobody could really even get their hands on one of these systems. In fact, Stephanie and I tried really, really hard.
Oh, yeah. We talked about it on Sovryn Tech.
Yeah, I mean,
the lengths that we went to. We were like literally sitting on the Amazon page as like the clock was about to turn to 5 o'clock, which was when it was supposed to be available for purchase.
Right.
Hitting refresh, and never seeing the buy button be available.
Yeah, exactly. It was crazy. And so, I mean, you can pay scalpers like $200 some odd right now, and you could end up like maybe you could get your hands on one. But Stephanie, you're of the opinion these things don't even really exist and that everybody has one's bullshit, right?
I mean, there might be a few of them, but I
Yeah.
think they never had the inventory that they claim to have that
Right.
would have supported a $60 price point.
Yeah.
Because obviously there are some out there, but maybe they were given to people as reviews or something to create buzz. And then like all the ones you can find are sold secondhand for more than twice the price.
Right.
That they had initially said.
Yeah. So, but it was a little system. It was just a mini Nintendo. Had like, I don't know, 30 games on it, something like that. A great selection of games. And unlike the original Nintendo, you could connect it to HDMI and it had upscaling
it's too
and all
bad
that.
because it was a great product.
It was a cool little
It seemed
system.
like the coolest thing ever. I was so excited for it, but now I'm just mad because I got my hopes up. It's almost like, you know, I don't know, you get so excited for like a date and then the person stands you up or something.
Right.
I feel like Nintendo stood me up.
Yeah. So in April of 2017, they said, okay, the ones that we just shipped out, they're the last ones. Nobody else is going to be able to get it. And everybody's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Nintendo? Like, these things are selling. Nobody can get their hands on them. Why aren't you making more? And I said, well, and I'm not the only one that said this, but I said, it's because they're going to come out with the Super Nintendo Classic. And that was really kind of the plan all along. Now, I think personally, and that's exactly what happened, is that I was right. The Super Nintendo Classic's coming out. It's coming out September 29th. I'm going to be camping probably about a week before at Best Buy here in New Hampshire, and I'll be ready, to get my hands on one of these damn things because I want it with a passion. But a great selection of games. I mean, it has less games, but I mean, there's awesome stuff on here. Donkey Kong Country, both Kirby games. I fucking love Kirby. My favorite
Kirby.
Nintendo character.
Oh my God. I can't get invested in it. He's going to stand me up again.
Yeah.
Brian, I'll believe it when I see it. Okay,
All right.
how about
Well, I'm
that?
going to get my hands on one of these damn things. So, but there's
good luck.
But I mean, they've
I
got
support
everything.
you, but I'm not going to be camping out at Best Buy with you.
Yeah. All right. Well, someone's going to have to come and keep you company.
Well, okay, Ellen, what are you doing that day? Come on over. We'll be like the support control tower. We'll be like on the radio with you. Okay, have you gotten it yet? Have you seen the boxes? Brian said if he can't buy one that day, he's going to at least demand to see that they have them in stock.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to be mean about
they
it.
really exist. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a tech journalist. You should do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go there with the microphone, the whole thing, and I'll be very mean about it and say, no, look, you need to prove.
And Ellen and I will be waiting at home, waiting to bail you out of jail.
Yes. Maybe I'll bring you a care package or two while you're camping.
Oh, Ellen, thank you.
Wow,
I
the
feel
bonus
so
points.
understood.
Yes.
That's nice.
So anyway, great selection of games on here. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of Mario games. Yoshi's Island will be there. There's a Castlevania game. One of my favorites, actually, Castlevania 4.
Oh my God, these are all the games.
Oh yeah, Mega Man X. In fact,
It's so hard not to get excited.
I know.
But I'm not.
Right. So anyway, and this one's a little more expensive. It's like $80 as compared to 60. And one of the really unique things about it, and I just want to bring this up, then we can get on to more interesting subjects. Okay. But I just wanted to say that, woohoo, I was right. But one of the more interesting ones is Star Fox is going to be on this, which is really cool. One of my favorite games. But Star Fox 2 is going to be on this. And this is going to be the interesting thing to watch because that never got released. You could play like an emulator.
Wow.
Yeah, you could play the ROM on an emulator of it,
God.
but nobody knows if that was like the completely finished game or what. So this is going to be this is more interesting because a lot of people were saying, why would you buy the NES Classic when you can just like put it on a Raspberry Pi or on an emulator on your computer, which of course Stephanie and I, we play Dr. Mario all the time and Tetris and everything. Why wouldn't you just use that? Why would you hash out any money for this? Well, this one is different because now you're getting Star Fox 2, which you can't get you just can't. Even the ROM that you can download for it isn't the full game. So this is going to be really interesting to watch, and I'm definitely going to be getting my hands on one of these. But anyway, that's enough about the Super Nintendo Classic. I mean, of course, Ellen will come over and play, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Does it have 3 players, or are we gonna have to do a tournament? style?
Do we take turns?
Yeah, we're going to have to take turns. Here's another funny thing is that there's actually games that are on here, like a Secret of Mana, that actually allows for 3 players, but there's no way you can play 3 players with this.
Huh. Well, there will be. Somebody will figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, again, we could just hook it up on an emulator, but Star Fox 2. That's all I got to say about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was
You
right.
said it was more expensive than the NES Classic.
Yes.
It's actually not more expensive because there was no way to get an NES Classic at $60.
It's actually on sale.
Again, I have to point that out. Yeah, it's cheaper than the NES Classic
point.
if it's actually available at the $80 price point.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's get into some science and some tech here. In fact, this story that I have is kind of an interesting meld between the two. I'm just going to open the tab here. Let's see. Women's Guide to Pillow-humping Master. Whoa, sorry. That is a tab I had open, but I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Woo.
What did I walk into?
Wow,
Some women love to hump pillows, I guess.
And this is a whole guide. How the hell did
I have 2 giant body pillows and a giant fish pillow, but I don't hump them. I snuggle. You're just very different.
You're kind. You treat your pillows humanely.
But I'm kind of shocked here. A Women's Guide to Pillow-humping Masturbation by Rebel Circus. Okay.
Well, that's helpful because... Okay.
Really? Tell me about this.
It is helpful because, so when I was in my teens, I realized that everyone else seemed to be masturbating and having orgasms. Definitely the boys were because, they figured that out at like 11 or 12. They figured out how to jerk off. Some do, yeah. The majority do it. More boys than girls figure out how to masturbate to orgasm at that age.
Okay.
So I was one of those people who were in their mid to late teens, and I had not figured out how to masturbate yet or have an orgasm. And I was like, I really want to see what this orgasm thing is about because I think it would be really fun. And so, but I didn't know how to go about it. I was like, what do I even do? Like there was no porn. I didn't know how to nobody showed me or told me about it. And actually all the adults in my life were like, oh, sex is bad. You shouldn't have sex. That's not fun, pleasurable. Fuck that. Don't even try it. It's bad. It'll make you pregnant and diseases and blind.
Or you'll go blind.
Yeah, and go to hell. So just don't even think about it.
Right.
And I was like, well, I don't think that's true. But, I really want to find out what this orgasm thing is all about. Because it seems grand. So I looked on the internet, the budding internet, which is, they barely had websites at that time. I looked on the internet for some information, and I found a couple of sites that were text, no pictures, but it was almost like instructions for people who are like either kind of like slow at late bloomers, let's just say, at sex, or just were like raised religious or like just didn't know how to even do the very basic first step of masturbating yourself to the point where you have an orgasm.
Right.
And it told me about different methods. Like it said, some women like to sit in the bathtub and like run the faucet over their parts.
Ah.
And that feels good to some people.
Do that?
Oh, yeah. Some women, that's like their favorite way to masturbate.
Actually, my first girlfriend was
that's why I say like women have particular styles that they like. So I tried the faucet thing, didn't really do it for me. I didn't really like it. Like it felt okay, but it wasn't like, or it wasn't making me orgasm. So then it said, some women like to like hump a pillow or like a stuffed animal or like put something between their legs that's kind of soft and like just squeeze it until they have an orgasm. So I tried that. That didn't really work for me either. And then it said like, well, some women like to, just kind of like lay on their back and like just rub themselves with their hand. Mm-hmm. And so I tried that, and that was the one. That was the style. But yeah, but it gave me suggestions that I wouldn't have thought of on my own. And I know some people just figure it out on their own. Like some people figure it out by accident. Like they're in bed, they have a pillow between their knees or whatever, and then like something happens and they start humping the pillow and they're like, "Oh, this feels good. I think I'll keep going." And then it's like, "Whoa, this feels really good. I think I'll So
well, that's one of the beauties.
Figure it out on their own, but I couldn't figure it. I had not figured it out, and I needed some inspiration. So I think that's a helpful article. That would help somebody have their first orgasm. That doesn't know what to do.
I will put that in the show notes now. So I'll leave that tab open.
All right.
I didn't plan on that, but okay.
Seriously, if you've never had an orgasm, and there's lots of women who have never had an orgasm, even into their 20s and even beyond that age,
Sure.
It doesn't mean it's very unlikely that there's something like medically or physically wrong with you. The most likely thing is you just, you kind of just need to relax and try different things until you find something that you really like, and then just keep doing that. And then eventually when you have an orgasm, you'll know. You'll know. Everybody says that, like it's annoying because they're like, well, how do I know if I have an orgasm? You'll know. There will be no doubt. You'll feel like muscle spasms and contractions in your pelvic area. And you'll feel like a wave of pleasure that's more intense than the pleasure you had been experiencing up to that point. It kind of builds up to it as well. Sometimes they can kind of sneak up on you, but it's a build. You get turned on and then it builds up to it. So that's how you know. And please, go for it. If you're thinking, hey, that's me, I've never had an orgasm, you're listening to this sound of my voice, try some stuff out and maybe read that pillow humping article. Yeah. Try the faucet idea. Try just rubbing yourself in circles with your hand. Put some oil on it. Coconut oil works really well. It's safe sex with someone you love, right? So have
yourself.
At it. Yeah.
Right.
I really appreciate you sharing that because I came from a similar background where my family was very religious and they're like, oh, we don't ever talk about sex. We don't even say that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just didn't know what I was doing.
Sex with pleasure.
Yeah, right. It's so hard to figure that stuff out on your own when you have no guidance, you have no information, no way of figuring out. It's just such an embarrassing topic to even bring up, but it's so necessary. It's part of our humanity.
Yeah, it's part of the human condition. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm certainly not going to add into this because the last thing the world needs is hearing some guy talking about orgasms. Really, the world does not need that. So anyway, but I appreciate you sharing it as well. Yeah.
One more technique to add.
Yeah, please.
Some people.
Yeah, anybody can add anything here. Go ahead.
I forgot to mention this before, but this was I think this was kind of in the days before vibrators when I was searching out this information. So that's why they were talking about the faucet and pillows and using your hand and stuff. But there's also a whole world of vibrating devices out there that some people like. And, you can play around with them. Maybe that's your thing. If it's too strong, you can sort of put a pillow between the vibrator and yourself or your underwear. You can do it over your underwear. So there's lots of ways to do it. And, I feel like it can pretty much be a healthy activity, to just learn how your own body works.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I almost consider it essential, especially if you're looking into a relationship of knowing how your body works before you go maybe even pleasing somebody else's.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's responsible sex.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, do we want to move on from this? Mm-hmm. I'm sure the listeners are like, oh shit, no, keep talking.
I hope I don't know. I feel almost kind of bad talking about that because, if there's young people listening, I don't want to expose them to something they're not ready for yet. But I feel like that was pretty, I don't know, that was pretty tame. I guess.
No, it doesn't. Please.
Okay. I hope there's not. I hope there's not too many young people listening to your show. I think your audience is mostly adults.
Yes.
Or if there's kids listening, they're listening with their parents and their parents can shut it off at any time. But
that's right.
Hopefully people know that this is an adult show. So,
I put the explicit label on every single one.
All right, there you go.
Anyway, but of course that just gets more kids to listen. But it's kind of put the parental advisory on a CD. It's well, shit, I'm going to buy that one. Well, I can't listen to that.
I suppose there's worse things that young people could hear.
All right. So moving on. But I do have lined up a story that has to do with sex. We'll get into that after. So anyway, this is from the Independent, and this is a story that was actually making the rounds quite a bit earlier on last week, and that was Anonymous. So, in fact, I'll just read the title here, and then we'll get into reading the story a bit. Why Anonymous claims NASA is about to announce the discovery of aliens. Cue
right.
Giorgio Tsoukalos. Go ahead.
Let's hear it.
All right.
I'm riveted
Ellen's
already.
Excited.
I'm so excited too.
Here we go. Much of the reading, just the
you had me at aliens.
Subheader. Yeah, I had everybody's all excited in this room. Much of the questionable claims relies on one comment from a senior NASA executive, as well as the agency's pioneering work. So I'll read a bit of the story here, then we'll break right into it. And I think there's a whole lot to discuss as far as this goes. So, all right. Anonymous claims NASA is about to announce it has found alien life. The truth is a little more complicated, but no less wondrous. An account affiliated with the Hacking and Activism Collective that being Anonymous, has released a viral video claiming NASA is, quote unquote, on the verge of detailing contact with extraterrestrial species. It takes much of its evidence from the work the space agency is doing to explore space and look for alien worlds across the universe. And while such claims might overestimate just how quickly the discovery will emerge, they are based in the truth. Much of the video relies on one testimony from Thomas Zurbuchen from NASA's Science Mission Directorate, who spoke to the U.S.'s Science and Technology Committee last year. In a relatively long speech that summarized the work NASA is doing on astrobiology, as well as the chances that it would find life, Mr. Zurbuchen, maybe I think I should pronounce it that way, said that the agency was close to revealing something very significant. Quote, with all of the activity related to the search for life in so many different areas, we are on the verge of one of the most profound discoveries ever, end quote, he said. Quote, and as we know from experience, NASA's scientific discoveries of today continually drive impactful research for tomorrow that goes far beyond the initial observations, end quote. But he also made clear that NASA hadn't, quote, found definitive signs of life elsewhere just yet, end quote, even though the search is, quote, making remarkable progress in astrobiology is a focus of a growing number of NASA missions, end quote. He detailed a range of those which also appear in the anonymous videos. Those include the recent revelation that a nearby star called TRAPPIST-1 has a whole star system of Earth-sized planets around it. I think there was like Stanley breaking in. I think it was like 7 of them, something along those lines. I talked about that in previous episodes of Sovryn Tech. Alongside discoveries on Enceladus that could indicate our own solar system has aliens in it. Now, that's one of the moons. That's a moon of Saturn, a lot more interesting even than Europa, which is where most people care to look. So anyway, there's just
What's with Enceladus? I've never heard of it.
It's an icy world. It's just like Europa, but it seems to
of methane.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is the seas seem to have evidence of like a lot more like oxygen. I mean, like all kinds of like more Earth-like.
Okay.
So this is the more interesting planet, or planetoid. This is the more interesting moon to look at than Europa, which is what most people, often look at. There's like 2 paragraphs left, so I'll just read these and then we can break it down. Dr. Zurbuchen also pointed to the work that is still ongoing. That includes technology like the James Webb Space Telescope, which will be launched next year and will be able to explore the atmosphere of planets that are a long way from our own. He concluded by discussing the work that would need to happen before proof of aliens could be found. Quote, for astrobiology, the key thing to remember is that answering the fundamental question of is there life out there will require scientific breakthroughs from many different science fields, including ones that are not currently engaged in this exciting endeavor, end quote, he said. That closing comment gestures at what Dr. Zurbuchen was aiming to discuss with his speech, as well as the promising future discoveries. His testimony was intended to show how NASA was working together to look for life elsewhere and to justify that work to U.S. politicians. As such, NASA and Anonymous are likely to be right that we are on the verge of discovering alien life, but it's not clear quite how long or just how much work it will take us to actually get there. So that's the story. A few things I think to caveat with this, like kind of out of the gate, and I want to. This will be a great roundtable discussion, in my opinion. First off, I'll say this. I don't think Anonymous is like even a real thing anymore.
Yeah, I remember years ago there were talk of them being infiltrated, and also
right.
It's like so decentralized. It's like anyone can kind of say, oh yeah, I'm anonymous, but like, are they really?
Yeah. So this video that was released, it's really not worth watching. I mean, it brings up evidence and it kind of puts it together to create this narrative, certainly, which is what the Independent was describing here. But yeah, anybody can make that video, put on a Guy Fawkes mask, and say, oh, I'm anonymous and try and gain some kind of legitimacy. Or anybody could crack into, a social media account and really anybody can, and crack into a social media account for Anonymous and claim to be anonymous. It's the same thing that the supposed real Anonymous does to news organizations all the time, where they take over their accounts and report whatever, happens to be going on. So, the appeal to authority here of it coming from Anonymous, I think is questionable in itself. There's a real problem with that. But it is based to some degree, in fact, of things that NASA said. I have a couple little points that I want to bring on about that, but I guess I want to open this up with the general question, and we'll start with you, Ellen. I mean, what do you do you think we're close to finding life? What do you think are the chances are of finding life? I mean, give me the rundown.
So all of the things that were listed in this article, it sounds like it's a lot of, circumstantial evidence,
yeah.
A lot of like disjointed pieces coming together. Maybe there is another moon or planetoid in our solar system that might be habitable. Maybe there are other planets that are like relatively close by in galactic terms, that could host life, but that doesn't mean that there is life there. That doesn't mean that we have heard from any alien intelligence. Like, what about the SETI Institute? If there were intelligent beings out there, wouldn't they have picked up something at this point?
You would expect it, yeah. I mean, admittedly, the argument for SETI, like what somebody would respond to you, I think, with that question would say, well, SETI's only searching like a minute, like percentage of, say, the universe.
Sure.
So maybe that's why they hadn't seen it. But I think your point is sound. But continue, please.
Yeah, I just think it's really unlikely. If there is alien life that's relatively close by, then why has it taken this long for us to find it? Maybe this is the first time they've made contact, which, if that's the case, that's incredible. Great. Let's see some evidence.
Right.
But I don't know. I think it's just more stories and more hype. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, the concept of hype with a government organization that relies upon Senate approval for more funding is something you really got to ask. Like, say, hey, wait a second, does NASA just need some more funding? Are they concerned, especially during the Trump administration, who has been defunding NASA significantly? Is this just a ploy, to try to get more funding? I mean,
oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems here, and one of the other problems is that Anonymous, or this video anyway, never really gets into what are we talking about with alien life. Are we talking about, like...
I was going to say exactly that.
Sure, right.
Life could mean a lot of different things. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there were bacteria in our solar system.
Sure.
Absolutely.
On other planets. I mean, I'm pretty sure there definitely are.
Yeah, hypothetically, it's already been found either like from an asteroid in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Like there's the claim there's that little worm, right? Or that little piece of bacteria, or then, some people say they've already found it on Mars. So yeah, like what's being described here, but please continue, Stephanie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are bacteria in our atmosphere. So even if there was some comet that passed through our atmosphere and somehow picked up some of those bacteria and hit some other planet or the moon, or who knows, I would definitely not be surprised by single-celled organisms on other bodies, planetary bodies in our solar system. I would definitely be surprised by so-called intelligent alien life. I think that's more of a pipe dream. But I guess I also wouldn't be surprised if NASA had evidence of bacterial life on other planets, like, for example, Mars, where they've taken a lot of samples of the soil and had them back. If they had evidence of that and withheld it for political reasons or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, they're not going to come out with it until the time is expedient for them, or until they are pressured to, maybe by a group like Anonymous.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there's evidence that NASA does hold back stuff, not conspiratorially necessarily, but just for whatever reasons that they have, that they hold things back. No, just like
the thing on the moon where there was ice on the moon or something, and then India went to the moon last year or something and said, oh, there's ice. You talked about that.
Okay.
On your show.
So this was 2009, where India sent up or maybe it was 2010, where they sent up a probe to the moon and they found water, water, ice, whatever. And, they thought they made this grand discovery, and they're doing this international broadcast about it and everything. And NASA comes out, no, we knew that 40 years ago. But they never told anybody, and same thing with on Mars, finding ice on Mars. That was a big announcement a couple years ago when The Martian came out. And they said, oh, we have NASA's like, oh, we have this big discovery we're going to talk about and everything, right? And they said, oh yeah, we found ice and water on Mars. And that was their big discovery. But they actually told everybody about it 2 years ago. It's no, we've already covered all this stuff. So NASA they're a PR organization as much as they're anything else, no doubt about that. And they will withhold information, certainly. I mean, Ellen, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand why they withhold it. I suppose they're waiting for, another big story so they can kind of ride the wave up and release it at the right time. But it doesn't seem like it would really benefit them to withhold this information unless there was, something that they were piggybacking on that would add to that public interest. But, if they did find bacterial life, maybe there's some sort of governmental interest in, figuring out exactly what it is, if it's dangerous, if it can be weaponized or something. Yeah. I don't know, what goes through the minds of government bureaucrats when they're studying new things like this. But I just want to know about it, why. I think the public would love to hear about this too.
Sure. I mean, I think it would be two very different reactions if it was sapient life, if we're talking intelligent life, or it's just bacteria. If it's just bacteria, I mean, there's still excitement to be had around that, because eventually bacteria or life evolves, eventually like this could become something, of more particular interest, or that humans can interact with or whatever. But it's not, if it's sapient life, that's a whole other, that's a huge ball game, that's just very, very different. So I feel like, I kind of wonder about this, like with using, I don't really think this was anonymous. I'll just say that straight up. Like that I don't think this was.
Yeah, it sounds a little fishy.
Well, anybody can be anonymous, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I have a problem with that. I wouldn't be surprised if this was some kind of, and again, we don't know what sort of alien life they're talking about, but if this was some kind of like setup of just getting people ready for the announcement. And that I could almost envision where this video is to kind of, what's the word that I'm looking for? To assuage the concerns over the fact that historically NASA does hold things back. So here you have the ultimate leaking organization, right? I mean, next to like WikiLeaks, maybe. You have Anonymous that can come out and say, oh yeah, no, they're going to announce it. They're going to announce it. And that way it becomes legitimate, and you don't question so much what NASA is announcing, or that they've been holding it back for a long time. Like it controls the reveal. So
yeah, I agree. I actually wouldn't even be surprised if it was NASA themselves making that video.
Yeah, I'm absolutely. I'm inclined personally. I think it is.
Right? Who else would it be?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
that's like the oldest trick in the book. Like create a sock of like an enemy or whatever.
Yeah.
And like use that to control the narrative.
Yeah. Now, another interesting thing, and only I could really see this because I have the story in front of me and I'm reading it. And this is something I thought that was kind of weird. NASA is not all caps in this. I find that in this story. Now, granted,
that
Independent
probably means more than most people would think.
I think so. So this is a British newspaper, or a British news organization. So certainly understand that. But I find it strange that it's just N, it's capital N, then AS, all small letters ASA, where it is an acronym, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I find that to be a little strange that suddenly NASA is not in all caps. I don't know exactly what to make of that, and I'm just kind of tossing that out there that I think it's kind of weird.
Hopefully it's just the editor, they just made a little mistake there.
Yeah, maybe it's just the editor. I guess kind of to describe,
maybe it's like the gold fringe, and you step across the bow of the ship in the maritime courtroom, and CFR 21 whatever.
Well, so where my line of thinking is going is that they're trying to get away from the acronym. This is national, and so it's trying to look like a international, more organization. Maybe. I mean, I'm just. Weird thing.
Ooh,
so
conspiratorial.
Very, very conspiratorial.
Why wouldn't they just call it ASA then?
ASA? Mm-hmm. Say that 3 times fast, or just say it 3 times.
ASA. ASA. ASA.
I'm guessing that's why they don't.
Yeah. So anyway, Ellen, I mean, what do you think? In fact, actually, I remember an episode of the Illumination Hour where you discussed alien life and the chances of alien life. You talked about the Drake equation and all these different things. Now, I'm kind of notorious for saying, look, I don't think there's much sapient life out there. I'm totally open that there's bacteria. There might even be some degrees of alien life out there that could be very, very commonplace. But I think you just said it earlier in this show. You said that, well, just because there can be alien life doesn't mean that there is, right? Which is sort of what the Drake equation suggests, is that there's, millions, there has to be millions of planets in our galaxy alone that is harboring life. It's like, okay, well, there's millions of planets that could harbor life, but that doesn't mean that life, is harboring, is in harbor. And so, I'm notorious. A lot of people kind of give me shit about this because I don't think that sapient life is commonplace in the entire universe, because I think there's a whole set of math that the Drake equation doesn't take into consideration, which is, what does it take for something to even become close to human? Like that, the odds of that, fuck the odds of planets being in the Goldilocks zone. The odds of that are billions to 1. I mean, it's crazy. So go ahead.
Right. So you hit on something there that's really important.
Sure.
And that is that there are fundamental flaws in the Drake equation.
Aha! I love it.
Here comes Dr. Goldblossom.
Yeah.
To the rescue. Yeah. So I think one of the variables in the Drake equation is what is the probability that life will arise? on a
Right.
planet. Not just that you will find a planet that is suitable for life, but what's the probability that life can actually come into existence, you know, something that's self-replicating. And we don't know what that number is. Like, there's no way to predict that number.
Exactly.
Because our only set of data comes from Earth and our solar system. And, like, we're reaching out now and trying to learn about other planets with, like, mass spectrometry. Spectrometer.
Yeah.
It's such a hard word.
Spectrometry.
Yes. Such a hard word to say. But yeah. So we're learning about, you know, what is out there as far as what it's on other planets. But, like, we still don't know what that proportion is. And the proportion of that life that becomes intelligent is probably much, much, much smaller. Like, you know, by degree, by huge factors, you know? So there's no way for us to know what the likelihood is. But if we could know, it would probably be like, you know, 1 in like 70 quadrillion or something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's a huge number.
Unrealistic. So
Is time a factor in that equation too? Because I always wondered, like, you know, maybe... So if you look at the evolution of life on Earth from single-celled organisms up to us today, and then I don't know how much time humanity has left before it maybe, like, destroys itself if that happens, but, like, the universe is trillions and trillions of years old, or maybe has no beginning either. Like, if there were life on planets at the same time, but they existed at different times, then they also wouldn't be able to find each other. So I wonder, like, how does time factor in? You know what I mean?
Time is such a huge problem because, you know, even if there were some other intelligent species on another planet, how would we transmit information to them fast enough for them to send a communication back? Like, you know, I'm sure Earth has been transmitting, you know, television and radio waves into space for, you know, as long as it's existed, since the 1900s. But, like, that stuff is traveling at nearly the speed of light, and it's probably not going to reach another planet or, you know, a planet where alien life exists for, you know, hundreds, thousands of years. What are the chances that it reaches a planet where there's intelligent life? Probably close to zero. And even if they did get it, it could be like 1,000 years in the future. And then they're like, oh, listen to these crazy things. Like, what's going on over there? We better go check it out.
Right.
And they finally make it over to Earth, and it's like, you know, 5,000 years later, and we're already dead. So there's no way. Like, time is just a massive barrier when it comes to communication. So I don't really think that there's any way to overcome that unless, you know, they were here now.
Yeah. Because
you can't really just overcome time and space differences. But yeah, as far as getting back to bacterial life, like, you know, you both made the point. It's very common. It could potentially be out there.
Sure.
So that's something that I would look forward to seeing. And I definitely think that, you know, humans at some point are going to find that if we haven't already.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's very possible. You know, one of the arguments for why even like bacteria life, why any life, you know, wouldn't get announced to the public right out of the gate as soon as it's discovered or something is that, you know, admittedly, this is going to upend a lot of religions. I mean, no matter what the life is on some other planet, like then suddenly you have to say, well, wait a minute, did God put that there? Like, how does this all work? It raises massive questions. And of course, the Catholic Church historically, just a few, actually, I guess it would have been about a decade ago. You know, they said that, no, extraterrestrial life isn't incompatible with the doctrines of the church because I guess they are feeling like anonymous and, you know, where no, this is coming soon, you know, coming to a theater near you. But
I love how the most pressing sociological issue for them to address was aliens.
Yeah, right.
Not like birth control or anything like that.
Feminism, all that stuff. You know, we don't need to talk about that.
Oh, but that's such a fundamental thing in religion, right? Is God made humans in his image, and then like all of the other animals are just here for us to eat and like have
we have
pets.
Dominion over them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if there's some other alien life, that totally throws off the dynamic that has been built into these religions. So,
yeah, like how do you treat these things? You know, for example, in Judaism, in fact, this is something I had to deal with growing up, was my parents argued all the time, can we eat turkey? Because in the Talmud and Torah, you know, like there's no kashrut law about turkey because turkeys don't exist, you know, in that part of the world. And so what do we do? Is it okay? Like, yeah, technically it follows Levitical law, but it's not mentioned anywhere. So how can we really eat this?
Are there any
Can we
similar
do that?
birds that are not kosher?
No, I mean, it follows all the, like I said, all the specifics of what it's supposed to look, what makes up what you can eat, right? Like, I mean, for example, this isn't birds, but like, as far as other animals go, like it has to have a cloven hoof and chew from the cud, right? So it has to have a cloven hoof and eat grass. So anything like that, you could eat. And birds, there's different laws for that. It passes all of those rules, but it's just, there's no turkeys. I mean, it's like an alien creature. It's a great analogy, and so, yeah, religions, I mean, there's going to be some big fucking arguments. I mean, not just like my mom and dad yelling at each other and whacking each other with frying pans or something, in the house. I took that dark, but yikes.
The consequences of that are huge because if you can't have bacon and you can't have turkey bacon, there's going to be some riots on their hands.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that would man. Like, could have, honestly, like it could have saved me a whole lot of trouble and I could have had bacon finally, and maybe I wouldn't fetishize bacon so much today. But anyway.
Pepperoni.
Yeah.
It all goes back to childhood, huh?
Yeah. It doesn't everything.
It sure does.
So, this is an interesting story. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up also a conspiracy theory, which I am wont to do, about what's called Project Bluebeam, okay? Which is, this notion is that this goes back this goes way back, okay, to where like Reagan talking about wouldn't the world be a better place if suddenly this is like back in like 84, where he said, wouldn't the world be a better place if suddenly, this alien force came from the stars effectively, and, suddenly humanity would unite just like that. And a lot of people have had conspiracy theories about this for a very long time, that actually governments are creating like this notion of aliens, or that they would use various special effects and all these different things, kind of like, and I think this would fit in sort of with the story where from NASA, Dr. Zurbuchen is saying, oh, all these different fields have to come together to prove that there's aliens. It's like, well, all these different fields would have to come together to create the illusion of aliens, being here, and that this would create kind of this one world government. And then NASA wouldn't be the National Aeronautics Space Administration anymore, would it? No, you wouldn't want to capitalize that anymore because now you have one world government, right? So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up. I'm not saying I believe any of that shit, okay? But I'm just saying that some people, I think, might feel
they're going to go there, yeah.
Yeah, and that anonymous, quote unquote anonymous, releasing this video is a setup of just getting everybody kind of ready, preparing them for, I mean, some people go crazy with this sort of thing. Like they say that Star Trek was made by the Rand Corporation.
Programming.
Yeah, predictive programming.
Independence Day as well is another example of predictive programming. Right. Just getting people used to the idea of an alien invasion, and that like everyone would band together if that happened.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Ellen, so I'm putting you way out on a limb here, and you can just, choose not to answer. But what do you think about this kind of like idea, this kind of theory? I mean, when you hear something like that, what goes off?
It reminds me of Agenda 21. I don't know. I don't know how far this goes down the rabbit hole.
Right.
But, yeah, I wouldn't put it past the government to do something like that.
To try that.
Yeah, because I mean, they've done all sorts of sick experiments on people in the past.
Sure.
So, what's to exclude them from doing something like that now? It would be an interesting psychological experiment to run. I wonder if they're running it like on all of the US at the same time. They would be gathering more data. It'd be a lot more efficient that way than just doing it in a laboratory setting, or maybe like a little controlled experiment. But yeah, it's just, I don't know if it's happening or not, but I mean, just think for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't buy in.
Yeah.
Don't buy in.
I mean, and it's, I'll admit, like I've heard about like Project Bluebeam, and I mean, anyway, I've heard about this stuff for a long, long time. And there might be some coloring of that, in my opinion, that I think alien life might be rare, because, I mean, even when I was a Christian, we were like told, like in Adventism, Seventh-day Adventism gets into a lot of conspiracy theories anyway, right from its existence, claiming that, oh no, we lost what Christianity was really all about. And so now this is we finally found out what real Christianity, what primitive Christianity looked like. And that's what Seventh-day Adventism is. So they kind of start off with conspiracy theories. But I remember preachers like saying this sort of thing, that they're going to say there's aliens, and it's not. And like they would attach it to claiming that they're Christ. And like, we're in Revelation, it says, if you see Christ, if someone says over here says they're Christ, don't believe them. There's only one. I mean, it gets all very into wacky shit. I mean, Stephanie, what do you think about that whole conspiracy theory? Of
Project
the government,
Bluebeam?
Yeah, of like the government creating an alien invasion, like hoax to forward some kind of agenda.
Well, I guess the first thought that comes to mind, I'm just sort of talking stream of consciousness here, but the first thought that came up for me was, I think the government loves like the UFO conspiracy theories because they can hide like advanced military equipment by saying, oh yeah, this person thinks they saw a UFO. And what they really saw was some advanced military aircraft, but the government doesn't want to acknowledge that it exists. Sure. So it calls the person crazy and they're talking about you. And the person's like, oh, I saw a UFO. And so then everybody thinks they're crazy and the government and the government wins and the person is effectively discredited.
Right.
I think it would be hard to fake an alien invasion, but they could, they certainly have an incentive to try to pull it off, to get people to just accept whatever the government does. Kind of like, 9/11, like I'm not a 9/11 conspiracy theorist. I don't spend much time like looking into what happened that day, but like certainly the incentives lined up pretty nicely for the government, right? Because they got to reap the benefits of being able to control everybody and have people just unquestioningly say, oh yeah, whatever you say we'll do because we're so upset by this thing, So I guess maybe there's an incentive there, but it would be hard to fake something as like what happened in Independence Day.
Yeah, it'd have to be a global attack, right? It wouldn't.
I guess, and like people have cell phone cameras. I mean, they'd have to actually get like a ship in the air and like fly it over some city and have people actually take pictures of it and things like that.
Well, again, I mean, here you have it, NASA coming right out and saying this just in the past couple months that we need to get so many different industries on board to make this discovery. And like, I think, okay, there's your global conspiracy for you.
You think they're going to fabricate the discovery?
Well, I actually don't think that, and we'll break this down here in a minute. But I mean, I could see where people would come to that conclusion. Where like all of these pieces, kind of like anonymous, put together, like you said, Ellen, put together a bunch of disparate pieces. I could see people putting together these pieces and coming up with that conclusion. So
yeah, I mean, Isn't there like some kind of defense grid in the air, like, kind of like Star Wars, like Ronald Reagan's Star Wars thing?
Well, okay. So, right. There was the Star Wars program from the 80s where they were looking at putting in like anti-nuclear weapons into space. But I mean, there's various things, the Geneva Convention that were saying you can't put weapons in space. You can't put weapons on the moon, or not the Geneva Convention, but there's been various accords that have discussed this sort of thing. But go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if those supposed defenses exist, and then there's still like some unidentified craft that like flies over a major city, like it's almost like the government had to like let it through because those things are meant to stop that kind of attack.
Sure.
So.
Okay.
I don't know. It's all just like crazy speculation at this point and thinking about Independence Day. But if that movie really is predictive programming, then it would happen a lot like that, right? There would be these big looming ships that would go over major cities and maybe destroy a few things. And then there would eventually be encounters with aliens meeting politicians or aliens just appearing and regular people seeing them.
Well, we did just get the sequel last year. Independence Day Resurgence came out.
Yeah.
I mean, Ellen, you have any other thoughts on this, or?
I don't know. I don't want to see this happen, but hypothetically, if it did happen, I would be really curious to see how they play it off. What kind of alien
now the morbid
suits
curiosity settles in.
Stanley Kubrick's gone now, so he can't help with the faking the moon landing, allegedly, right?
Right. Yeah. What kind of alien suits are they going to put on?
Yeah, right.
They're going to have stage makeup? Or are they going to do like, the giant scuba suits or something? Like they'd have to make up this whole story about, they came in at light speed. We couldn't pick them up on our radars.
Right.
And then, there'd be the beam and they'd float down, but it's really like they're coming down on a string or something.
Holograms, folks. Holograms. Anyway.
Yeah, well, just want to see, what do the geniuses behind this conspiracy? What do they have going on?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I mean, honestly, what I think is really happening here, I do think this is marketing and PR, but I think it's because this is something I've been saying a lot actually this year on Sovereign Tech. It's kind of been a recurring theme that looks, colonizing the solar system I don't think we're ever going to get beyond that. But colonizing the solar system, everyday people going into space, I think that's happening probably in the next decade. I really think that that's going to be a thing. And I imagine this is just more hype for that, more excitement to get people on board. I mean, in that case, hell, that could have been Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk making that video or behind that Guy Fawkes mask. In fact, honestly, I think Jeff Bezos would put a Guy Fawkes mask on and say, "Oh yeah, there's aliens out there. NASA's going to tell you about it, but we'll get there first." And then suddenly, his space company, Blue Origin, will, they'll find out quicker.
What if like Amazon already has launched some people up to Mars and are starting to like terraform and colonize
Oh
it?
boy.
There's a conspiracy for you.
Well, that's a whole other story. But I mean, so my claim that I just made, I mean, how do you feel about that, Ellen? Like the idea that this is just PR?
I think that's true.
Sure.
Because they've already made these discoveries. They've already released this information. It seems like this leak, this supposed leak, is just, a rewording, a restructuring of things that they've already said to us. But now it's taking it one step further and postulating that, maybe this means something more than all of these little pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add on a little bit of information that was like just 2-3 weeks ago that was announced, is that the Army, which is ironic because NASA came out of the Army originally. Originally the U.S. Army was the space program, but now they're talking about that they need to make a Space Corps effectively, which is very interesting. That's
wow.
That announcement coincides with this video. Not that the video talked about it, but that was also a story that I've had lined up for weeks for Sovryn Tech that they wanted. Yeah, they need to make.
I thought spaceships had naval vessel names and it was a division of the Navy or something.
Oh, generally, but that's another. But it kind of adds on. I mean, but what I really think it's just all adding on to is that everybody knows, industry, government, whatever, that look, humans are going to be going into space and it's going to be happening soon. So would you, I give a 10-year timeline on that. I mean, Ellen, what do you think? And then Stephanie, I want to hear do you think humans are going to be going to space in the next decade, or what do you think?
I'm actually a little bit more pessimistic about it than you are.
Okay.
So I know that you've brought up on your show in the past that, Elon Musk is going to be sending, 2 rich people around the moon on a spaceship. Right. And that's going to be happening, at the end of this year or next year?
It's like 2018, 2020, something like that. Yeah.
So, and that's a big step. These are just like regular people. They aren't astronauts.
Right.
They haven't been through the training that all of the astronauts go through. They're just, they're paying to go.
Yeah.
And even spaceship launches, they're expensive.
Yes.
They take a huge amount of resources with all the rocket fuel that goes into it. And, it's just prohibitively expensive. And then getting the resources to send to the planet that you want to terraform, like, where are you going to get all of the metal, all of the food, all of the oxygen? Either you have to completely re-engineer the surface of the planet so that it begins producing those compounds on its own, or, you have to mine that stuff from somewhere else. And the Earth already has a limited supply of, like, oxygen and food and water. And are we just going to be, like, shuttling that to another planet? That's going to be expensive, too.
Sure.
I just don't see how we're going to get that done in the next 10 years. Maybe 50. I would say that's more realistic. But, until we start building, like, maybe not a Dyson sphere, but, like, hemisphere.
Yeah.
And then we can, like, get some real serious energy, and then we can start, like, mining asteroids or, pulling resources from other parts of space, not just from Earth. Then we can really start talking about terraforming. But as of now, 10 years to me seems unrealistic.
I really appreciate that perspective, though. And I mean that because, like every point you're bringing up is absolutely solid. And I think that's why, and they never really say how they're going to do this. I think that's why almost every, like, private space mission is talking about, okay, we're doing it to, like, collect resources from asteroids or something along those lines. Because I think you're right, Ellen. I mean, it is prohibitive. I think there's definitely something to be said for that. And that maybe 10 years is a little optimistic, to say the least. So, I mean, Stephanie, what do you think? 10 years? Going to be in space?
So I am more optimistic than Ellen. I think that there are solutions.
Fight. No, I'm kidding.
No, we'll pet the cow together.
Okay. Oh,
yeah. That cow's
picture. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Pet the cow. Is that what the kids are calling it?
Whoa. We'll save that for a minute. All right. I mean, I have a story about that. That's what I mean. Anyway, go ahead.
So, I think there are solutions for all of those things. Just like there are challenges with limited resources on Earth, there are going to be challenges on other planets, more so, in fact.
Sure.
But necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it were possible to bring some kind of bacteria to Mars that could be fermented in big fermenters and then make plastic out of them and then make all these structures out of plastic, for example. And then you could just grow more, essentially, based on the nutrients that are already in the Martian soil.
What is it? So guano, do you remember what guano, the problem that solved? Was it phosphorus or something?
So guano is bat dung.
Yes.
And it's easy to collect because it falls, because bats are on the surface, the ceiling of a cave, so it just falls down and it's on the bottom of the caves.
Right.
And it's very rich in a substance called urea.
Yes.
And urea is valuable. It's in cosmetics and it's in a lot of other things. It's a waste product. We all make urea. We excrete it. That's why it's called urine, because it contains urea.
Mm-hmm.
But so do bats. And that urea is mined for industrial use. But yeah, like I think there will be creative solutions that are found for all of those things, and private industry is great at coming up with, like Amazon solves so many problems, that I think they'll be great at finding some kind of creative solutions to limited resources on Mars. If there's a couple of missions in 2020 or something like that, that go and plant a few like cacti on Mars, let's just say, those cacti are going to start producing oxygen if they survive, if they take root and stuff. They'll start producing oxygen, and then it'll be like the ball will just kind of get rolling, I guess, for other plants to be able to survive there. And then plants can do so much on their own, and microorganisms can do so much on their own. Like if there's a little patch of Mars that it doesn't even, it has to be in a greenhouse to start out with because they don't have the atmosphere. But if there's some soil bacteria that get brought from Earth, there's some organic, fertilizer, manure or whatever, and there's some plants that can survive in harsh conditions and temperature variations, like some of those desert cacti, and they just get planted and dropped there and then left alone for a couple of years. There'll be a patch that's terraformed, essentially. And then that patch can be expanded, and then more biodiversity can be brought in, and more plants, and maybe more people eventually. And once there's enough plants for people to survive on, then people can be brought in and maybe start having babies there. And so, I think the ball is going to get rolling in the next 10 years. I remember back in 2010 or 2011, there was an article that came out about Elon Musk wanting to send people to Mars and start a terraforming colony by 2016 or something like that. Now, that date definitely got pushed back. Sure. And it may keep getting pushed back by 5 years or so. But I think by 2020, the ball will be rolling. Definitely on mining on the moon. I think there's natural resources on the moon that it's going to become cost. It's going to make sense from a cost perspective to have companies that go to the moon to mine these resources. Because I remember even George W. Bush was talking about rights, land rights.
Just a brilliant guy, to really,
Well, you can actually buy plots of land on the moon.
Really?
Yeah,
no, I didn't know
website.
that. Oh, wow. Yeah. How much do they cost?
I don't know. Look it up.
You can also buy the names of stars, but it won't get recognized by the IAU, right? But
right.
Well, yeah. Anyway, please continue. Yeah.
So, I think the fact that it's being discussed in a serious manner, to having land rights on the moon or owning parts of the moon, means that people know that there are valuable resources there. And just like shale oil didn't make sense a couple of years ago, but now it makes sense because the technology has gotten better and it's gotten cheaper, it is going to make sense at some point in the near future to mine the moon.
Sure. I think...
And then once the moon, then we get Mars or whatever, the belt, the asteroid belt.
Yeah, once you have a staging ground of some kind. Yeah.
Then it's just you fly from there.
Yeah, I think, Ellen, I think you're still absolutely right in pointing out, though, that this is really...
Challenging. Yeah,
challenging.
Challenging, for sure.
Yeah, and still may be very cost prohibitive.
Yeah, but Stephanie made some great points. I mean, I think plants and bacteria especially, they're going to be so key in terraforming any planet because you do need life there to start changing the environment and making it more human friendly.
Green Mars, brought to you by Monsanto.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And it reminds me of the Genesis project from Star Trek a little bit, you know?
Oh, right. Genesis, which was a missile that would completely automatically terraform a planet and like give it jungles and all that.
Right.
Star Trek 2, yeah.
Kind of similar to that. But the thing is, like, with bacteria and plants, like, that'll be successful over a small area for a few years, but, like, terraforming the entire planet or even, like, large chunks of it, that's going to take so long. But I think you're right in that, you know, maybe in 10 or 15 years, we can start thinking about sending, you know, bacteria and plants and humans to Mars or to the moon and living there long term. But, yeah, I don't know that it's going to be like a successful long-term program maybe sooner than like 20 or 30 years in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, very healthy skepticism, in my opinion. So,
well, if it doesn't, I mean, I'm sure if it doesn't work out, like we've got genetic technology that can modify plants to be more able to survive on Mars. You don't have to terraform the whole planet right away. As long as there's a few swaths or bubbles and people don't go nuts living in there. It's like that movie, The Martian. Like you only need kind of a small area to get started. And then once
potatoes.
once that's rolling, then it'll work out.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, admittedly, like I'm intrigued by space stations. I mean, I already signed up. I'm a citizen of Asgardia, which Asgardia.space. If anybody wants to jump on that, they are not a sponsor of Sovryn Tech, but I do want to get into a sponsor for Sovryn Tech. And you know, before we were mining asteroids and all this different stuff, and maybe this company would be able to jump on that. That'd be interesting. If you want to get your hands on some precious metals, you can get it right on Earth, and that is through Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. You just go to rrbi.co. That's the website. Let them know that the Golden Stallion sent you to get some gold yourself, and you can buy it with Bitcoin if you wish to, you know, talk about the currency of the future. I definitely think cryptocurrencies are going to be a part of the space race, or, you know, existing in space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's already a Bitcoin node that's like orbiting the Earth on a satellite or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I was going to say Roberts and Roberts is a company that is future focused, and they're part of the current and future world because they do accept Bitcoin for precious metals purchases.
Yeah.
And they're just all around like really nice to deal with. You're going to get your stuff fast. You won't have to wait weeks like other places. So yeah,
right. Boy, we got a bit of
some Martian storms over
we have some wild storms going on right now, but we're trudging through it.
You know, there's a tornado watch in this part of New Hampshire.
A tornado watch? Mm-hmm. Ellen, I think you might be stuck here. I don't
know. Darn.
Yeah.
Gee.
What am I gonna
tornadoed in.
What a shame.
If I walk outside, I'm just going to get sucked away. I might as well just stay here, right?
Yeah. I mean, oh, boy.
Nothing to do but podcast.
So torturous.
Let's hope the power
I know. I have to, like, pet the cow with you guys and spend time with you.
Oh, man. This is going to suck. No, I'm kidding.
No, it'll be great. We'll get the pentagram out.
Yes. Oh.
Wow.
Ellen, you've got it. I tell you.
Yeah. She's part of the cabal.
Yeah. So anyway, I think Stephanie's off to...
Yeah, speaking of data leaks, I have to
Speaking of leaks.
One, yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, we'll... I guess, you know what? We'll do another quick ad while Stephanie's off doing that. So, actually, Ellen, I'll ask you: Are you a Star Wars fan? Have you watched Star Wars?
I have watched Star Wars.
The entire saga.
Yes. I mean, it's been a few years since I've seen some of the earlier ones, but yes, I've seen all of Star Wars.
Are you a fan?
I am a fan. I mean, if we're going to relate it to Star Trek, Star Wars is, I think it's great entertainment.
Right
sure.
on.
Yeah.
So Stephanie hates it, so it's a good thing she's not here. Anyway, but I'll tell you, if you're into Star Wars, and I know a lot of my listeners are, and of course I'm very much into Star Wars quite a bit. Well, quite a bit is putting it mildly. I want you to check out a podcast, and that is Resist the Empire podcast at resisttheempirepodcast.com. This is being done by a couple of guys. I mean, they just deliver. In fact, Ellen, do you know Roger Paxton?
I've heard his name many times.
Yeah,
before.
he's a fantastic guy. If you ever run into him, I mean, you'll be like, wow, You are so cool. And you hear it when you listen to the Resist the Empire podcast. And the nice thing is it has that liberty perspective, which Star Wars, when you look at the Galactic Empire, obviously is sorely lacking. So it's great to get that perspective, to get that attitude when you're listening to a show, and to kind of have those eyes when you're looking at everything that's going on, in Star Wars. Because there's a lot of Star Wars out there right now, especially ever since Disney bought it. And it's tough. I mean, it's really tough to find anything that has that liberty perspective but talks about pop culture and entertainment. Definitely a rare thing out there. And I would say that is that Resist the Empire podcast is a very rare gem. So I appreciate them being a sponsor of Sovryn Tech. You believe me, you won't be disappointed. Anyone that listens to Resist the Empire podcast, you're going to love it. It'll make a Star Wars fan out of you if you listen to it. So anyway, check that out, resisttheempirepodcast.com. I appreciate them sponsoring Sovryn Tech, and of course Roberts Brokerage for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. It's a real honor. So anyway, let's get into, Stephanie's coming back, so we'll stop talking about Star Wars now.
Vive la resistance.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. Let's get into, while we're talking about space, I've got another story here, and we've got about 25 minutes left to the show. Everybody's feeling good. Does anybody, Ellen, do you need to take a break, or are you?
Oh no, I'm ready to go.
All right, you're all set. Awesome.
Yes.
All right, high fives going around the table here. So this story, this is something, in fact, it might end up being the title of the show. I don't know. We'll see, because I've brought up this subject at least 3 times, I know, because in the past year I had an episode called Sex in Space 3. And I titled it that because it was the 3rd time that I had really kind of discussed
with the
it.
subject and can't stop talking about it.
Can you blame him?
Thank you. Jeez, thank you. Ellen, you need to be on every week. This is, I mean...
No, I can't. It's an interesting subject.
Yeah, I was going to say, Stephanie, you and we do a show called Sex and Science Hour,
That's
for
right.
crying out loud. And I had actually saved this article for that at some point, but, once that comes out, maybe we can, redress or undress the subject. But this is from actually June 5th, 2017, from Gizmodo, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about sex in space. Now, I've discussed this subject a bit in the past, and I've talked about varying techniques that people have supposedly tried, or maybe conspiratorially tried, or were never tried, or just theoretical, whatever. But I want to hear what they have to say. Then I want to hear what you two ladies have to say about this whole thing. I mean, personally, we could start off with this. I mean, yeah, I want to get into space. I'm all for this. That's part of the reason I think I'm so optimistic. It's like, oh, well, yeah, in 10 years, I want to be up there. Admittedly, the first thing I want to be doing, is getting my freak on.
Zero G sex?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, how could that not excite anybody that ever saw Moonraker, James Bond? But, but I mean, it's certainly something I'm intrigued in doing. I guess I should ask both of you first, and I guess we could start with, we'll start with Stephanie, because I've been starting with Ellen the whole time. But Stephanie, I mean, are you prepared to go into space, and do you want to get freaky up there?
You know what? My answer might surprise you.
Oh, no.
I actually don't feel any need to go into space.
Wow.
I am happy with what I have. I love my home. I love my home planet. I feel like humans are really well adapted for Earth.
Sure.
Sex is really fun on Earth. It might be fun to try, but I kind of doubt it's going to be better than what we already have.
All right, but
because we're made for what we have already.
Right, but I mean, if you want a sweepstakes to I can stay in a space hotel, kind of like the Japanese were planning in the 80s. I mean, would you rock it? Would you do it?
I hate to kill the fantasy, but
I'm dying right now.
You can't go into space without training for it. You're going to vomit. It's not going to be sexy at first. It is a fantasy. It's a nice fantasy, but it's a fantasy. If you train for months, maybe it would be fun and you'd be able to even get horny and turned on. But the average person doesn't have the physical adaptation to just go to space for a night and fuck,
Well, they are trying to do this through space elevators and all that. But anyway, that we would get into a whole other subject about this. But I totally understand what you're saying, even though you may feel differently on some nights, and I know that for a fact. But
I mean, it's great to fantasize about it. Power to you, and it's fun to talk about having sex on Earth for sure. You just pretend you're in a spaceship, and that's as far as I really feel the need to go. I mean, it wouldn't be sexy how much money it would cost to go actually into space.
Yeah. No, I understand.
I don't know.
You wouldn't want to just go to space though. If you could go through the training and you had the offer. I mean,
I don't know. It depends on how hard the training is.
Fair enough.
As I understand it, it's pretty hard.
It's a great reality check. No, seriously.
Call me unromantic or whatever, but, you know, like, I'm a big fan of being grateful and happy for what you have. And I am very grateful and happy for what I have with Earth.
Right on.
And for this wonderful planet I was born onto, and for the amazing ability to have great sex in a way that humans are evolved and adapted for. And that's been working for millions of years. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't think the grass is greener in space.
I don't think
there's no freaking grass or air.
All right, we probably won't be able to get to. I would love to respond to everything you said.
Okay,
but I mean, your points are totally sound. I mean, I get it. But I have a lot of responses to that. Even like the idea of what humans were evolved for. I think is a whole other subject. In fact, speaking of something a NASA director said once, or not director, but a NASA worker once said, is that we were meant to be a multi-planet species. But that's another subject for another time. Ellen, save me here, please.
Okay.
Do you want to go to space, and do you want to get your freak on when you get there?
Well, for as much as I really empathize with what Stephanie's saying about being grateful for having this beautiful planet that we're very well suited for, I feel the sense of like being an explorer, and I'm like, if it's a new experience that few people have ever had, I would definitely go through the training. I don't care how long it takes or how hard it is. I am going to push myself through it, and I'm going to get up into space.
Fucking right.
By gosh. Yeah, and I would be curious to see what it's like to have sex up there. I don't know. Like, what is zero G? What is it like to even walk around in zero G? I don't know that.
Right.
I mean, like, maybe being in the water is kind of similar. But
it probably feels like you're at the peak of a roller coaster all the time, and you feel like you're going to vomit. That's what I would guess.
Oh no, that's like the most thrilling moment, being on a roller coaster.
All right. Well, thank you, Ellen. So
you and Ellen can go to space. Go for it.
But anyway, let's talk about this. I mean, and I'm because go ahead.
One more thing.
All right.
Like, almost every movie that's being realistic about this, even Star Trek, contains scenes where like the characters get depressed when they're in space for an extended mission, when they're like just floating through space for years at a time. It's depressing as shit. They're just like, they feel like they're on duty all the time. Somebody has to run the spacecraft like around the clock. There's always like, it's a militaristic atmosphere. You have to run a tight ship or else you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And it's like artificial lighting, like everything's metal. I don't know. Like, I'm a little bit nature-philic, I guess. Like, what turns me on is like beautiful sunsets and rivers and the grass and the trees and the sun, and like, I don't know, without that it's hard to imagine like getting turned on in like such a clinical environment of a starship. But I mean, some of those Star Trek quarters weren't too bad, but we're talking like hundreds of years in the future when things have gotten way more luxurious.
What about the holodecks? What about the greenhouses?
I guess, but
I mean, you would have VR.
We don't have access to holodecks, though.
Well, yeah, but VR is moving fast.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, without real sunlight, I just don't know if you can really replicate that.
Sure. I mean, admittedly, part of the, like, speaking of Star Trek, I mean, part of its makeup from the beginning was finding other planets. Maybe because consciously or unconsciously, the writers knew that what you're describing would be a problem. It's like, no, we got to find other planets. Yeah, I don't share that. I get that. And I mean, this is something, I don't want to get into this because this gets into like a kind of almost a racialism, I think. But, there's the research based upon the, it was a DDR4 7R gene. They call it the explorer gene. Mm-hmm. You can look up about this, but that some people have it and some don't. And like these, there's people that are explorers and people that aren't. That's the argument they make. I'm not saying I buy it, but it's there.
Well, I don't know if I buy that because years ago I would have said, yep, sign me up on the first spaceship. I would love to go to space.
Yeah.
Now my perspective has changed because of events in my life, and where I'm just like way more grateful and happy for what I already have.
Sure.
And I've recognized that in a lot of situations in my life where they thought the grass was greener, it wasn't.
Fair enough.
So,
okay. Well, if you don't, all right, let's read this story. Let's get into this. Let's talk about it. And if you would, Stephanie, like just imagine that for whatever reason you are in space.
Okay.
And so how would you react to doing these things, or going about these sorts of things, or just your opinions on some of the theoreticals here, because it is all theoretical. Supposedly nobody's ever had sex in space to this day. There's NASA themselves.
NASA's about to announce that they have.
Yeah, right.
They're holding it back.
Well, it's interesting that this story is making the rounds now too. Hey, but now NASA claims, NASA has had the opinion that maybe the Russians have done it at various points. That the Russian government has ordered sex in space, maybe on the Mir space station or something like that.
Nothing sexier than when the Russian government orders you to fuck.
Anyway, so
science experiment.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take one for the team there. Okay, so communism. Woo. Anyway, so here's the story from Gizmodo. Everything you've ever wanted to know about sex in space. Not a long article at all, but let's read some of it. People have been boning on Earth. How about that's a great starter. People have been boning on Earth since the dawn of time, literally everywhere they can. Folks bone on beaches and airplanes and even volcanoes. You name it. Volcanoes. Wow, I didn't know that. I've never even thought about that. That's very exciting. You name it, someone's probably gotten off there. The only place humans probably never banged in is space, which to some makes it the final frontier of sexual conquest. Microgravity sexing is an idea that inspired countless movie moments, but with bona fide space tourism approaching as early as potentially, again, I say potentially, next year, it's not inconceivable that couples will try and enact their fantasies for real. The problem is sex in space will probably be the least sexy thing ever.
Gizmodo's on my side.
The first dilemma is the lack of privacy. According to Mark Shellhammer, former chief scientist at NASA's Human Research Program, close quarters might make things a bit awkward for horny astronauts. Quote, if SpaceX sends 2 people to the moon in 2018, it's likely that there would be a third professional astronaut with them. A third professional, quote unquote. Let's see. He told Gizmodo, speaking of SpaceX's recently announced plan to slingshot 2 wealthy tourists around Earth's satellite, which you mentioned earlier, Ellen. Quote, Apollo spacecraft were very cozy, and I can't imagine something that would be ready as early as next year would be very large. Cozy meaning that, of course, the Apollo capsules were very small. Let's read a little bit more here, but then I want to comment on the privacy thing. SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule holds 7 passengers at most. If the sex havers were able to look past the crowded quarters and lack of privacy plus the inevitable motion sickness, they could probably bang, but it would be difficult. Microgravity would have seriously deleterious effects on the sexiness of the situation. Now, we'll read more on that, but this is a part that I've actually never described, that I've never discussed, which is why I think it's appertinent to bring it up again, to talk about sex in space again. And that's the privacy issue. Yeah, there's a good chance that, especially if we're talking about, say, the next 10 years or even 20 years, maybe even 50 years, with how prohibitive it is to even, like you were talking about resources earlier, Ellen, what's it going to take to make a ship the size of, say, even the NX-01, right? Where there's grins here.
Playing footsie under the table.
Oh, is that what they call that now? Petting the cow?
Yeah, first it was petting the cow, now it's playing footsie.
Gracious. All right. So anyway, ladies, so I mean, yeah, it would be very cost prohibitive, even in my mind, even in my most optimistic visions, to build something the size of, say, even the smallest starship out of Star Trek. So privacy is going to be an issue. People are either A, going to hear you fucking, or B, you might end up, if you really want to do it, if you're that horny of an astronaut, you might end up having to do it in front of people. I mean, I'll start with you, Ellen. And please feel free to go as extreme as you want, whatever, to say whatever terms. I mean, I've been saying freak on, but I don't mind if people say fuck or whatever. But anyway, whatever. Yeah. So I'm just saying no holds barred here. So what do you think? How about the privacy concerns? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, my initial reaction is to be uncomfortable about that, but yeah, I mean, I think that's something that you can adapt to. Adapt to being surrounded by other people. You grow more comfortable with them. Mm-hmm. Maybe it becomes sort of like a family situation, where you spend so much time around these people that you just become comfortable with them being close to you. And like in a lot of other countries for long periods of time, people have been living with their extended family in houses and
in
their
a one-room
children.
hut or yurt or something.
Yeah. And they still have sex. They still have babies, you know, and their family is very close by. So
real quick, I mean, even in America, before somebody says, "Oh, well, that's backwater," you know, no, log cabins. Those were single room log cabins you find across America. Somehow families were made in there. Anyway,
right.
Please continue.
Exactly. So I'm thinking the discomfort that I have about maybe like having sex with someone in a room where there's other people like trying to sleep, or maybe they're having sex. I don't know what's going on, but my discomfort with that could be untaught, because I think that's just something that I was taught as I was growing up. It's like, we don't talk about this. It's not something that we do around other people. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been trained, and I need to untrain.
Aha.
Or maybe like just, you know, get trained in a different sort of way. I don't know. But
sure.
So if I were in this situation, I think, you know, eventually I would get used to the idea of it, and I'd get over my fears or whatever withholdings I have.
Yeah,
but
okay.
You never know. I mean, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm a prude.
Right. Well, Stephanie, what do you think? I mean, the privacy issue in space.
I think if you get, some people are exhibitionists, where it turns them on to have sex in front of other people or expose their genitalia or parts or whatever.
Sure.
Some people are voyeurs, where they get turned on by watching other people have sex or expose themselves or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think if you get a perfectly balanced, matched up ship of voyeurs and exhibitionists, or maybe people who are all both,
right,
then it would not be a problem. And in fact, it would be like a self-perpetuating cycle, because everybody who's watching the first couple would get turned on, or more than a couple, whatever. Everybody would get turned on by each other, and everybody would want to do it in front of each other. So there's that. I also agree with Ellen that I think it, to a large extent, the taboo of needing privacy for sex, or even something like going to the bathroom, is a learned thing, and can be rethought or reframed or undone with enough awareness about it. Or if you want to get over that hurdle of being embarrassed or wanting, like, feeling like you have to be private, it's possible to get over that for most people. I still think Brian likes to talk about the 3 dolphin technique, where there's basically like the way dolphins have sex.
They did mention the third professional in this article. They didn't say 3 dolphins.
Yeah,
but
I think that was a reference.
But I think it's a reference to what I have talked about many times, which supposedly has never even been seen. Like, it's called the 3 dolphin technique because the theory goes is that that's how dolphins have sex in water, which is comparable to 0G after a fashion. Mm-hmm. Is that, you know, one dolphin it'll be a sandwich. You know, there's 3 dolphins. One dolphin holds the other dolphin against the other dolphin that's, you know, doing the insertion, doing the stooping here. Mm-hmm. And but nobody's ever seen dolphins actually do that. Mm-hmm. So who came up with this 3 dolphin technique? Does that mean that actually the U.S. Air Force or whoever, you know, did experiment with sex in space? I don't know, but please continue with your point.
I totally think it's possible to do a variation of that without the third dolphin. And what I mean by that is, like, if you had sort of a modified spacesuit that was like, picture like a 2-person sleeping bag. So,
okay. Mm-hmm. I was going to say it's called the 2 suit. And it has Velcro, which we all know.
Oh, no, it's so unsexy.
Unzipping the Velcro.
Now I'm glad you had everybody explain the joke, because this is a problem. So the 2 suit is designed by a woman. I mean, and it's been tested in those planes that do the like suborbital kind of drops, where you can experience 0G. Like there's that crazy picture, and I love this man, but there's that crazy picture of Stephen Hawking where he's like in 0G. He's just like, you know, it's so bad. But anyway, but they tested it in that, and it worked. So if that's what you're describing, something like the 2 suit, but again, it has Velcro, and we know that as soon as you hear that
it's
sound,
gonna ruin the mood.
It's over. Romance done. Boner kung. Anyway, go ahead.
So yeah, there's like fabric that could hold you together, sort of like a sleeping bag kind of situation.
Yep.
There's also the idea that there could be like handles on the wall, and you could slip your feet into footholds and slip your hands into handles. Right. And then so could the other person potentially. And then you could kind of put yourselves together and do it that way. Mm-hmm. There's also, you know, gay sex or oral sex or different sex acts, right, that could be done in space. Like, you know, one person probably has to hold on to some handles to keep themselves steady. The other person maybe some footholds, but
what
that
about
could work.
Magnetic suits?
Magnetic, yeah, that's another way to overcome 0G. But, you know, all the sci-fi movies and Star Trek, they have artificial gravity.
Right.
So I feel like artificial gravity is a good idea, not just for maintaining bone density on long trips, but like for avoiding all those practical problems of like, how do you go to the bathroom without the pee flying everywhere? And
well, they use, I mean, and on space shuttles and space stations and everything, they do use like a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, that makes sense. A vacuum to vacuum up the pee. But like, yeah, I mean, still, it would be easier to just, do it like we do on Earth.
Well, yeah. So the 69 position is one of the ones that has been talked about, like in actual more serious forums of like, this is how you can make it happen.
You really don't need any leverage to do oral sex.
Right. Now we'll talk about that more as the article goes on, because that's addressing the microgravity issue. So, but I mean, just for my own comment on the privacy issue, I mean, I think that like going into space, one of the things that excites me personally about going into space is doing so with an intentional community. And that intentional community could be 3 people, could be 15. I mean, I would, the smaller the better, in my opinion. And in that intentional community, I mean, maybe it's a polyamorous relationship or something, and everybody's just in love. And then privacy's not an issue because everybody's on board. I'm not saying the polyamory part is necessarily what I want. I'm just, saying in general, these are one of the possibilities of getting beyond culture, of what we consider to be normal relationships and everything. And I think that could really change a lot.
I mean, anyone who's willing to go to space has to be pretty open-minded. So I would say they'd be maybe more likely to reject those cultural norms that are found on Earth.
Right. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. Anyone have anything else they want to add to the privacy issue? No,
I think we covered it pretty well. I mean, I like Stephanie's point about the voyeurs and the exhibitionists.
Yeah, right.
It's very creative.
Yeah, maybe some people just like to watch, and that solves the privacy issue right there. Just gotta not mind that they're
And some people
watching.
like to be watched.
Well, some people like to be watched, and some people don't mind it being in public. And hey, what the hell? I can certainly appreciate that. Okay, so let's read on a bit here. So getting in more into the microgravity issue. Quote, the first challenge is simply the result of moving about in near zero gravity. Every push or thrust will propel the astronaut in the opposite direction. End quote. John Mills, chair of the Department of Physical Sciences and Engineering at Anderson University, told Gizmodo. Quote, imagine a pair of ice skaters standing on fresh ice. If they were to push their hands against one another, they would each shoot backwards away from each other, end quote. Basically, the space sexers would have to be anchored to both the spacecraft and each other, making things uncomfortable very quickly. Astronauts on the International Space Station have to be strapped in just to work out on a treadmill. So think about how much more awkward this would be with body chafing. More fundamentally...
Oh, honey, I'm not afraid of strapping in. Let me tell you.
Well, all right.
Yeah, no chafing needed. Right? I mean, there's lubrication available.
This could be great for people who are into pegging or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, straps? Okay. Well, let me read a little bit more.
Or you could just like kind of lock your arms around each other. I could imagine just a bear hug, that could do the trick.
Okay. Well, let's read a little bit more here. More fundamentally, microgravity could make it difficult for a male astronaut to get an erection, even if he really wanted to.
That's one of the things I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay. Well, even if he really wanted to have one, quote, due to the microgravity environment, the way that blood flows through the body changes, end quote, Mills explained. Quote, here on Earth, our blood pools more in our lower extremities, while the heart must work much harder to get blood to our brains. In space, blood doesn't pool in a particular part of our body in the same way, end quote. In space, blood travels to our brain more easily, meaning the heart does not have to work as hard, which can cause it to weaken over time. This also means less blood readily available in the lower extremities, or as Mills puts it, quote, the region that the body pulls from when generating an erection, end quote. So, okay, 2 things to discuss here. Stephanie, you already broke into like the 2-suit and the problems of doing things in microgravity and the 3 dolphin technique. Ellen, do you have anything to add on just like the problems of stooping in 0G, or do we want to get into the blood flow issue?
Hopefully, whoever's having sex in space is wearing a helmet, because you're going to be like bouncing around inside this spaceship.
Yeah, right. So, well, okay, well then let's talk a bit about, the blood flow issue. So, I mean, the obvious answer, the obvious solution to this is just send women into space, no men, and just have women. I mean, because they won't have this problem, with erections or whatever.
Yeah, I find it so funny how everything always centers on an erect penis.
Yeah,
as though
like that was the second second thing to come up.
If you don't have that, there can be no sex.
You're not going to have a boner. God damn it, you know?
Right. Like, that isn't even a problem that would really... That's not the first problem that would cross my mind.
Right.
I can see how it would be an issue because our bodies are designed to work with gravity, and we have valves and stuff in our extremities that keep the blood flow at a certain homeostatic level. So, yeah, I mean, I could see it being a challenge. However, even if a man doesn't have an erection, he could still receive sexual pleasure and have an orgasm. You know, like, could you imagine, like, I don't know, for example, Brian, maybe this is too personal of an example. You can cut it out if you want.
Oh, boy. Okay.
We have gone in hot tubs before.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes that can be an issue in hot tubs just because it dilates all the blood vessels in the body.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
And
yes.
so it all goes to your skin. And so there's just less of a pool of blood to draw from.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can create fluid dynamics issues with the blood vessels in the penis.
Yes.
And so, but there's nothing to stop you from still getting touched in that area and having it feel good,
right.
even if you don't have the strongest erection or no erection at all.
Right.
So, I mean, people get creative. You don't need a hard penis to have sex. You can have sex with your fingers, your tongue, your hands, everything, like humping a leg. You know, there's all kinds of ways to have sex. Humping a face, you know.
It's a failure on Gizmodo's part to be concentrating so much on PIV, you know, on penis and vagina.
I mean, I imagine,
sex is
to
so
be
much
fair,
more than
their
that.
readers are going to be thinking of that.
Sure.
So I'm sure that's like something that people are going to want to be curious about. However, just expand your definition of sex to include things that don't require a rock hard penis, you know?
Ellen, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree.
If you don't want to talk about dicks, that's fine.
Hey, I have no problem with that. It's just, it sounds almost like what they're getting at is like the whole point of having sex in space is to make space babies.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you need the erect penis for, which I don't know if that's the goal of having sex in space.
Exactly,
right?
yes.
Is the goal to have babies or is it to just have fun?
Right. Because, as I say often, you know, sex co-evolved as a social structure, social lubricant, as well as reproduction. Like, it's not just... It's equally valid for both. It's not just meant for one thing. It's meant for two things. Or, well, it's not meant, but it can be for one or the other. Go ahead, Ellen.
So while, getting an erection in space might be difficult, I don't think that's a deal breaker. Like, there are plenty of ways that you can get around that. Like Stephanie was saying, you know, you have all of these body parts, you have, toys and stuff. So you don't need that necessarily. Like, you can still have a good time. You just, maybe your blood isn't flowing the same way.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Now, I wonder I wonder how much it affects male orgasms, because it is possible to have an orgasm without having an erection necessarily, or without having the strongest erection.
Right.
I guess if you were aiming to make babies, it would make things a little more complicated. You know, maybe there'd be some leakage into the cabin or whatever, and some droplets flying around.
Yeah.
But I also wonder how much it would affect orgasm for women as well, because women do get erection of the tissue in the clitoris and around the vulva, and like the clitoris goes back. You see the little tip of it on the outside of the body,
but it's a whole wishbone.
It's like a wishbone shape, and it's like there's prongs that extend back into the body, and that tissue is all erectile tissue, just like what's found in the penis. That's the one that we're most familiar with. So, I wonder how it would affect things for women and female orgasms as well. Yeah,
I mean, I guess my kind of response to this is that, and this is something that is like fact, you know, as to where a lot of this is hypothetical, what exactly is going to happen in space. Women in space, like, and I'll just say this plainly, become sexier. Like, on all the, you know, evolutionary markers that people find sexy. No, it's true. Like, talking about this blood flow, cheeks become rosier because of 0G. Honestly, breasts become bigger, like in a way, like become fuller. I mean, and this is like, you can read about this stuff. This isn't, it's not my own little fantasies or something coming up. This is, legitimate. And so I think that, after a fashion, like you kind of have these added layers of sexiness that I think could help. I mean, I get it. Blood flow is a real thing and all this stuff, but a lot of, at least, I mean, I guess speaking for myself, whatever, but I think for a lot of people, sex happens, mainly in the mind, and an erection really comes from what's happening in the mind. And I think that there's a lot of things that would happen there that would enhance one's level of arousal. you know, and so I think that would overcome any issues of like blood flow not being the best thing. Not saying that, you know, muscle degradation and all that stuff. I mean, that's very real and that's a concern as well. But anyway, does anyone have anything else to add on that, or we'll continue on?
Keep going with the story.
Okay. All right. So, we're running a little bit long. So, but if everybody's feeling good, we'll just finish up this article and we'll talk and we'll end it. So, all right, let's see. It doesn't help that during that long during spaceflight also seems to cause a drop. Weird how they worded that. Seems to cause a drop in male astronauts' testosterone levels. Lower testosterone levels are linked to lower libidos in men, so this would complicate the already complicated and unsexy situation for women. There may be other challenges, and we'll address those. I'm just going to say quick. I think as far as like the testosterone levels, same thing. Like there's going to be different capabilities and enhancements for arousal, I think, for a lot of people. So anyway, I'll read on here. Unsurprisingly, the effects of microgravity on a woman's sex drive is tragically understudied. Mills speculate, which...
Of course.
No kidding.
Right. What a shock. Women are understudied in science? No.
That thing you said about the clitoris extending around the vagina, like, wasn't that just discovered recently?
Yes. Just in the past 10 years, as far as I know.
Yeah,
it's a very new discovery. Yeah, it is deplorable just how little science is spent on the subject of women's pleasure, but let alone women in general. It's really, you know, but I mean, you're second-class citizens, so, I mean, what do you expect, right?
Hey, take what we can get, right?
Yeah. Anyway, facetious, of course.
Come on, Alan, let's go over here and pet this cow.
So anyway, unsurprisingly, let's read on here, or like I said, that, you know, this has been understudied. Mills speculates that the female libido may be impacted by microgravity, seeing as female arousal coincides with an overall increase in blood flow to the nether regions. Quote, I would conjecture that it would perhaps be more difficult for a female to become aroused in microgravity, though perhaps not as difficult as in the case of males, end quote. Sex in space would likely be very hot and, then it gets into other things about swampy bodies. So anyway, I mean,
swampy
bodies, meaning that it would be very warm.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, but I mean, how do you feel about this, like the blood flow thing with women? I mean, do you think this would create any problems, and do you have any solutions? I want you to solve the world's problems right now.
The biggest problem, I imagine, is what happens if a woman gets her period in space. Where does the blood go? Like, does it even fall out or drain out from the uterus?
I have never talked about that, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. Yeah.
So what if there were accelerators built into these spaceships? You know,
accelerators.
Yeah. So when they're training astronauts to go up into space, they do have, it's like a long arm, and on the end there's a cabin.
Oh, yeah.
So in a way, I think if you were like rotating in a room that's on this long arm, it would kind of like force you against the wall in a way, sort of creating gravitational pull.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So maybe that could help. Mm-hmm. If you
could overcome the dizziness.
Yeah. If you could overcome the dizziness. And,
it's like that Turkish twirl. Oh my God. I went to a carnival when I was like 14, and I went on this ride called the Turkish twirl. And it's literally a big drum circle, right? It's like you're standing inside a drum, basically, and there's a floor and there's walls, and you stand against the walls, and then it starts spinning, and the floor drops out, and then you're attached to the wall because it creates this G-force. But then, like, I have never been so dizzy in my life. I still remember how dizzy I felt. The room did not stop spinning for minutes, and it was so disorienting.
That's so strange, because when I went into one of those, I didn't feel dizzy at all. I just felt
good for you.
Like,
maybe you're meant to go to space. Yeah, it did feel weird to be trapped against the wall, because like you would try to move, but you can't, because it's like strong.
Or you go
G-forces.
upside down. That's what I would do. But yeah.
Oh, really?
If you're strong enough, I guess you could. You could do that.
You could,
talk about the vomit comet. Man, that sounds like.
So okay, well, menstruation, right? I mean, this is real. I mean, you're either going to have to, hyper absorbent ultra wings tampons, or
vacuum tampons,
vacuum tamps.
That sounds a little invasive.
Might be. Okay. So that's a problem that they don't discuss at all, which not a shock. I mean, why talk about women's problems,
right. We can only talk about the problem of, what if the dicks can't get hard? We can't have that's the most pressing concern.
Well, I mean, any solutions, anything you want to discuss on that, or we can move on?
I don't know. I feel like if you had a tampon-like device, not a cup, like a sponge or something, you could kind of squeeze it out, like just, do the Valsalva maneuver, like where you go, like create pressure inside your chest and abdomen, basically.
See, I know nothing about this. Okay.
Oh, Valsalva is basically when you try to exhale against a closed glottis. So like you're, like that kind of thing. That's like when people lift weights, they do that because it creates pressure inside the chest and therefore the abdomen.
Okay.
And it creates like a harder support for your spine and for your whole chest cavity to be able to lift something up like a deadlift or something.
Okay.
And it also creates pressure on the pelvic floor because that pressure goes all the way down. Because it's all like a cavity inside there. Your chest and abdominal cavity is all linked. So if you create pressure in your lungs, it's going to go down all the way to the pelvic floor. So if you had an absorbent thing and you just like did enough of those moves, you could probably like expel the blood out of the uterus, I would guess.
This would be part of that astronaut training you're not looking forward to doing, right?
So, I mean, I think that's probably how it worked, but there have been female astronauts that have gone up for longer than a month, right?
Oh, yeah, by a long shot.
So they must have done something about it. I guess they didn't talk about it. But
yeah, I've never looked into that. Now I want to. Ellen, I mean, any other thoughts on that aspect?
Yeah, I'm so curious about that. But, maybe they were on some sort of birth control that kept them from having menstruation cycles.
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, that's certainly possible. I mean, there is a regimen of vitamins and pills that that astronauts do take. That's very real. So, okay, well, I mean, the last bit here, we don't need to talk about the sweaty stuff. I mean, that's obvious. There's going to be fluids freaking everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
like that's just the name of the game. And there's not a whole lot of solutions unless, I mean, the two-suit idea, which other than the Velcro killing all romance, the two-suit idea, if it was like absorbent and, just took on sweat and whatever else, obviously that's a very easy solution.
Why is it sweaty? Because there's no airflow or air movement? Why would you get more sweaty? Because there's still air in there, right?
I mean, you'd get sweaty from, I mean, if you're doing it right, you're going to get sweaty, right?
Right.
So, the problem is that the sweat, there's no gravity to just hold the sweat to you or to have the sweat go down your face. It's going to go everywhere.
Oh,
right?
God, ew. Yeah, that sounds disgusting. Yeah. That's one of the biggest problems, I think.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it.
Like an asteroid field of sweat around you.
Oh, God, ugh.
Well, I mean, imagine what happens if, when the guy...
Other bodily
right?
fluids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not just sweat you got to worry about.
Yeah. Forget about it. I'm not going to say it. Okay.
I wonder how the motility of sperm is in 0G.
Oh, that's another science experiment we have to run.
Oh, boy. Okay.
I bet because they're swimming through a fluid, like they're still able to swim.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a little bit different. I don't know.
It makes the motion of swimming, but don't really go anywhere.
Yeah, right? Is it like ice skating and they're just slipping and sliding or whatever?
So, all right. Well, now I'll say this. I've thought in my various attempts at writing fiction, I've thought about this whole little problem here. And I think that what you do is that with your oxygen reclamation and perhaps recycling system that would get invented, you would have a slight amount of suction throughout the entire cabin of whatever spacecraft you happen to be in. And that would just constantly be sucking in fluids and doing whatever it needs to with those fluids, hopefully recycling them somehow, instead of just tossing them away. And I think that's about the only solution you can really have, other than wearing a body condom or something.
Good ventilation and filters. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, there's that. So anyway, I'll read on here, just the last bit. If, however, a couple was able to look past the complicated mechanics of microgravity copulation and the hygiene issues, they could probably bone. Quote, I think it would be both feasible and safe, end quote, Shellhammer said. Quote, the mechanics would be tricky, but solvable. 2 people in a sleeping bag would probably do the trick, end quote, which is what Stephanie had said earlier. Of course, you'd probably have to anchor the sleeping bag to something sturdy and then strap your bodies together. Yay.
Oh, please. I think if you're horny enough, you'll find a way to do it without the straps.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you, Ellen, completely. So in conclusion, sex in space, while not impossible, will definitely be a goddamn disaster. This is the article saying that, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe the bizarre mechanics will inspire innovation like that sex pod from The Fifth Element. Until then, just have sex on Earth, everyone. So, okay. Any kind of closing thoughts on all of this? Ellen, you're welcome to go first.
Yeah, they said the title of this article was what? Everything
you need to know.
Is it really everything?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
this
I think
is not
it's
comprehensive.
Raising questions, hasn't really done it. Like, there's not even any like theoretical physics of what goes on when you're in space.
Right.
So, come on, let's be a little more creative. You know, this is like begging for somebody to start writing about this, to start postulating, like, how would this actually function?
Yeah.
What are the physics of it?
Right.
How does it affect the human body?
Yeah, I mean, has the article deterred you at all from possibly wanting to do it?
No.
Right.
It hasn't deterred me. It was a fun thought experiment that I got to play with you guys.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Stephanie, I mean, anything in conclusion?
I feel validated. I feel like all my concerns about
you were
space
right
and
from
sex,
the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like I was. They thought of the same concerns. It's too complicated. Just keep it simple, you know? It's so much fun to have sex on Earth. Like, why add in all this extra challenges?
I have too much of a sense of adventure to not want to really like pioneer. I need to pioneer this avenue of the human condition.
Oh, that's so brave of you.
Thank you. Give me a goddamn medal.
Well, you've got a hall pass for this one.
Hey, whoa, all right. Jeez, you're click save and star this episode. Wow, hall pass. All right. Anyway, well, I mean, what else do you have, Stephanie? Or
I'm all done. That's it.
You're done. Okay. And Ellen, you're...
Oh, I think we've discussed everything we can about
we
this
really
at this
have.
point.
Yeah. So, I mean, me, I'm not deterred by this at all. I really want to debunk the article, but I know I'm just, I'm going to have to do it. And
yeah, you're going to have to.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody has to.
Somebody's got to do it. So,
this is really just begging for more science.
Yes, it needs rigorous research, rigorous. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, and also I think a lot of the things we discussed early on would, a shifting in to some degree of the human condition of, maybe getting rid of some of the cultural mores that we have could really solve a lot of these problems. I think that might be the top solution for most of this is just changing how we think about sex, how we think about, the act and all of that. So anyway, I think that's a hell of an episode. I think we're ending on a high note here, even though Stephanie is always just bringing it down to earth.
Come on down to earth.
Yeah,
it's fine over here.
Well, if it's with you, I mean, hey. So anyway,
you can send me into space figuratively.
Woo!
How about that?
Fair enough. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for
having us. Of course, if people want to find, for people to find more of you, smvoice.info is your website.
Yeah, although I really need to update it. It's been a while, but smvoice.info is my voiceover website. You can find my books on audible.com.
Woo!
Including some sci-fi ones.
Yeah,
nice.
There might be some
ones.
Yeah, there might be some alien sex in there. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can also find our podcast at sexandsciencehour.com.
New episodes coming soon. So, and Ellen, if you don't want them to follow you at all, just don't say anything. But I do want to say thank you so much for being on the show. If you want people to keep track of you, just say you don't want them to, if you'd rather not.
Oh, hey, I don't like being tracked or traced or followed or anything like that.
Yeah.
But you can friend me on Facebook, I guess.
Sure. Okay.
Sure.
So Ellen Ball's out there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on the show. It was so much fun, and I really enjoy this.
Yeah. No, you're tons of fun to have on because, like, you obviously get it. I mean, you're already saying we need to break out the pentagrams. I mean, that's just I'm sold. So anyway, So thanks to both of you. I thought this was a great episode.
Yeah,
very
that was
entertaining. Really fun. And of course, folks, my new book, it's out, Dark Android, the 2017 edition, your no-nonsense guide to securing your mobile device and reclaiming your privacy. Woo, that you won't need in space when you get to the Stupen up there. But darkandroid.info if you want to get your hands on that book. And also, if you want to become a Sovryn Tech patron, just go to sovryntech.com. And I will see you on the other side. Yeah! I might leave that in. All right.
just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.